order the Open Space Board of Trustees meeting of July 10, 2019. One note on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Item 3A, which is the recommendation on a license agreement with Boulder County for a guardrail on 95th Street. We're deferring that until the July 31st meeting, and at that time we'll have, that'll be set down for a public hearing so that it'll be, it'll be a full-blown public hearing on that item.
Huh.
Right.
Okay.
And we just thought that since it's actually being put to us for a formal vote, it'd be better to do it as a notice, a hearing, not anticipating that it's controversial with the public, but just since it's actual vote, let's do it as a noticed agenda item rather than just under matters from the department. So the next item is approval of the minutes of the June 12th, 2019 meeting. I know Karen and I have both given Leah some minor typo type comments. Does anyone have any changes they want to?
Did you get the misspelling of Andy Brader?
Yep.
Okay, cool. That's all I had.
Dave, Kurt? All right, then do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I move we approve the minutes as amended.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? All right. The next item is public comment for items not identified for a public hearing, and there is no item identified for public hearing tonight, so this is the time for anyone to speak to any issue they'd like to. And we have two people signed up so far, Elizabeth Black and then Steve Watts. I know you're both familiar with the rules, so I won't explain them to you. I just come on down. And Leah, is the buzzer working? Good. Okay, Elizabeth?
Hi, Elizabeth Black, 4340 North 13th Street. I must comment on staff's recommendations last month to adopt an 11-month-long process to consider lethal control of prairie dogs. Staff laid out all the benefits of taking 11 months to decide yes or no for lethal control. But entirely missing from their analysis was any mention of the costs of taking 11 months to decide. There was absolutely no mention of the costs to neighbors of destruction of their properties. No accounting of the cost to lessees from lost income due to prairie dogs. No attempt to quantify further lost OSMP lease payments from properties rendered unleasable by prairie dog occupation. No acknowledgement that even more OSMP properties will be invaded by prairie dogs in those 11 months and rendered unleasable. And no discussion of even more OSMP lessees abandoning their leases due to prairie dogs. You are charged with protecting our open space lands. Thank you for your service. So here's some math for you to consider. In the next 11 months on OSMP agricultural lands, the more than 20,000 prairie dogs there will increase at their normal 30% rate, a rate documented by OSMP censuses, and add 6,000 more prairie dogs to the numbers that have to be removed from agricultural lands. 6,000 more prairie dogs. In the next 11 months on OSMP grassland preserves, the more than 90,000 prairie dogs on the 4,500 acres of prairie dog colonies there will also increase at their normal 30% rate and add more than 27,000 prairie dogs to already crowded preserves. Those 27,000 new prairie dogs will spill over onto more agricultural lands. 27,000 more prairie dogs. Staff says that they can't make a yes or no decision quickly because they're going to be really busy relocating 300 extra prairie dogs. 300 from an extra 10 acres and slowing recolonization with barriers and irrigation, which they already know does not work. In the meantime, tons more topsoil will be eroded from hundreds of OSMP acres. Hundreds of acres will be denuded and desertified. Hundreds of acres of native vegetation and pasture will turn to invasive weeds. It will cost you decades and millions of dollars to restore this land. Is this really what you want to do? Is a protracted, ugly public process worth all this destruction of your land? Is this really how you want to handle an emergency? Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Steve Watts and then Margaret Lecomte.
Good evening, trustees. I'm Steve Watts, 600 block of Tantra Drive. And I promise this evening I will not have any math in my presentation. Not to make it light of an important topic, though. I'm here to introduce the Boulder Public Lands Coalition. The Boulder Public Lands Coalition, or BPLC, has formed to improve the quality of life around Boulder by partnering to enhance access and increase the enjoyment of public lands and give a unified voice to passive recreationists, including hikers, dog walkers, nature enthusiasts, equestrians, mountain bicyclists, and others in Boulder. One of the ways that BPLC seeks to fulfill their mission is by partnering with government officials and land managers, environmental organizations, business, and individuals to collaborate on stewardship projects. The first of these community events was a joint effort by BPLC and CU South. The Scooping of the Poo, held at the popular Boulder Recreation Area, CU South, on National Trails Day, June 1st, 2019, was successful in bringing BPLC member organizations and 25 community participants together for the common good. The next stewardship opportunity with Boulder Public Lands Coalition is scheduled for August 8th at Dowdy Draw to perform trail maintenance. Potential members of the coalition met in late February and agreed to organize and give a unified voice to recreationists. In April, the founding organization signed the charter agreement of the newly named BPLC to collaborate on issues affecting access to public lands. BPLC members currently include Boulder Area Trails Coalition, Boulder Mountain Bike Alliance, Colorado Mountain Club, Community Cyclists, Friends Interested in Dogs and Open Space, Open Boulder Foundation, and Wellwise LLC. A coalition of outdoor recreation groups has existed ad hoc for the last 20 years, coalescing to weigh in on master plans, trail study areas, and visitor plans in Boulder. In October of 2018, Open Boulder Foundation sought to form the coalition into a permanent autonomous organization. Open Boulder Foundation hired a community organizer, me, tasked with forming the coalition as a separate, self-sustaining entity within a 12-month time frame. If you'd like to know more about our coalition, sign up to get information about our stewardship events, you can simply go to that URL or Google Boulder Public Lands Coalition. Thank you so much for your service. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Margaret Lecomte.
Okay, good evening, and thank you for letting me speak. I represent Save South Boulder, an organization which ordinarily talks about flood mitigation needs in South Boulder. We have repeatedly, along with other public groups, asked the city to develop flood mitigation plans based on consideration of the entire South Boulder Creek floodplain, and especially to consider upstream detention solutions and the use of the natural floodplain to minimize impacts on open space, on downstream residents, and particularly on the protected endangered species area that is your custody for the open space. We now know that CDOT's right-of-way along Highway 36, where the city's current engineering plans require the location of a mile-long high-hazard dam, is not wide enough to meet the standards for those dams. So the city's current mitigation plans call for OSMP to sacrifice at least 40 feet of its own land to supplement what CDOT can provide for a flood wall down to groundwater, and that's required in the city proposals. This puts incredible pressure on the Open Space Board of Trustees to dispose of bits and pieces of city-owned open space. We call upon the Open Space Board of Trustees to reject this disposal of OSMP land both for its incompatibility with the Boulder Valley Comp Plan and Open Space and Mountain Park Master Plan principles, and because the land in question is in or near the state natural area and home to critical populations of endangered Ute lady's tresses, Preble's jumping mouse, wetland tallgrass prairie, and the endangered, now threatened leopard frog. The construction of flood walls and the foundations in this flood mitigation project also would create devastation in the area beyond the construction of the wall itself. And we believe such disposal would set a very bad precedent. These wetlands, habitats, and the species they hold are not replaceable. Further, the Boulder Valley Comp Plan calls for the city and the county to preserve floodplains, to prepare for floods, to prevent unwise uses and adverse impacts in the floodplain, and to seek to accommodate floods, not to control them. And this, I would have to say, is one of our basic sets of principles regarding what we want to see in South Boulder. Not only would this follow current best practices for flood control, as opposed to building dams and flood walls, but it would take pressure off the most precious parts of our open space. The problem is that city staff has simply avoided so far giving any serious consideration to exploring upstream detention options, despite the fact of direct and repeated requests from City Council to do so. But staff refusal doesn't constitute an imperative for the Open Space Board of Trustees to hand over either currently designated city open space, or the state narrow, is that? I don't understand the time is up. Okay. Basically, please don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
We get an
Apologies for the
enhanced
repeated-
technology, it sounds like.
Beeping and buzzing.
No. Well, thank you for your comments. So with no one else signed up, so with that, we'll close.
I have a quick
please.
question. Elizabeth mentioned 30% rate increase in prairie dog populations, and I'm just wondering a little bit more about that, whether that varies from year to year, or because my observation from being out north of town recently is that they're reproducing like rabbits right now.
John Potter, Resource and Stewardship Manager, to address that. I don't know specifically in the northern area, but system-wide, it was 8% growth in acreage last year. And so that was what we think probably is about right for the north, but not 30%, but 8%. However, that's not population growth. That is areas where we map the prairie dogs. We don't count them. So.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Well, then with that, we turn to matters from the department.
Yeah, we've got a couple of items on the agenda to work through, but before that, just a couple of informal updates. Some of you probably do know, but due to more trail repair and enhancement work, Boulder Falls is closed for a few months, and we'll provide updates as we get nearer to completion of that next phase, and we'll update you as on the progress of that project.
Dan, just a quick question on that, and I don't see Mr.
Yeah, I don't see Mr. Reeder here either, so hopefully someone here has an answer.
I had just raised the question generally last year about safety there and the risks that people take crossing the highway. And there was some thought that possibly working with Department of Highways, CDOT, that something could be done there to put better signage, or because as I recall, and I haven't been up there in the last month, there's not a lot of warning that you get that you're coming up to a place where people and dogs and families might be crossing the road. And so I do think it is a place that is probably about as hazardous as any trailhead that we have, because you have to park on one side and scamper across to the other side, and it's pretty fast traffic there. There he is.
Man with the answer.
Hiding downstairs.
Sorry, Jim Reeder, Trails and Facilities Manager. No, you caught me eating a brownie. So the concern is traffic crossing.
Safety crossing from the park.
Yeah, we are also concerned about that, and we have, during this process, we've tried to convince CDOT to move the road
so that the parking would be on the other side, on the same side as Boulder Falls, which is what we thought would be the best answer.
Sure.
And of course, CDOT has decided that they can't do that. And so right now, we're looking at more or less replacing what has been there in the past. So, sorry to say.
And so, remind me, was that a marked crosswalk?
Yes,
And
it is a marked crosswalk.
do we have any signs up and downstream that say, you know? 'cause I don't
Crosswalk
know-
ahead.
I don't know what the speed limit is there, but I bet it's close to 60.
Well, I don't think the limit is that, but but that's what people drive, yes.
Drive it.
Yeah, there is certainly a sign from this side, there's a sign saying Boulder Falls ahead. I don't know that it says that there's a crosswalk, but we'll be working with CDOT when they get to that point also.
I think certainly something that says pedestrian crossing or something like that would alert people that they may be surprised by dogs and small people
Yep.
crossing the road.
Or
So-
slow people. I mean, they
Yeah.
may not be very small, but they may be slow.
That's right. Anyway, thanks for whatever we can do.
Yeah.
One thing the city might do is put in flashing, crosswalk things there.
We've suggested that, and then that idea has been rejected so far.
By CDOT?
We'll do, yeah, by CDOT.
Well, they're blowing up the canyon, maybe they can blow up that part as well.
They are doing that. They are doing that.
I would just mention that I was up at Boulder Falls, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, and actually the majority of the cars were just pulling off on the right. And there's not a great shoulder, but there's certainly enough of a shoulder, which solves the immediate problem of crossing the road. On the other hand, doing a U-turn at that spot it presents its own dangers. Because cars are moving pretty fast in both directions through there, and the sight lines from people coming down the canyon are somewhat limited.
Yep.
I also just wanted to mention, and I don't know if this is from us or maybe from the Daily Camera, but the statement gets made fairly often that Boulder Falls was closed in 2013. I'm sure you would probably remember better, but I don't think that's right. I don't think the closure of Boulder Falls had anything to do with the flood. I think the rock that hit the visitor from Wisconsin, I think that was like in 2010 or 2011.
Yeah.
And we don't want to conflate two. Those are two quite different issues.
They are quite different, but
Yeah.
the trail was damaged in the flood.
Oh, yeah, right.
And-
But I think we
and so-
closed it as a result of the lawsuit or the
We did.
fear
We
of
closed it,
lawsuit.
and then it was reopened before the flood, and then we had to close it because,
Again,
I mean,
okay.
it was only open for like a year, and then we closed it because of the flood.
Okay, thanks
damage
for
from-
clarifying that.
Jim, what is the timeline for the current project as far as when we're expecting opening again?
We are, the contractor has committed to having it done by September 6th, so basically after Labor Day.
Thank you.
So, and hopefully they'll get it done before that, but that's what their commitment is.
Thank you.
I had a follow-up question on Boulder Falls. Was the area closed when the recent fatality occurred?
No.
The area is closed to climbing. The trail was open.
Okay.
I think it's important to note that incident did not occur on open space property. The most
It
recent,
what?
most recent incident did not occur on open space property, just for clarifying.
Just one other note, just wanted to put a shout out, the 4th of July weekend and the 4th of July holiday itself was fairly quiet from open space perspective, and just a big shout out to all of our rangers, all of our education and outreach staff, and all the volunteers who support that effort. It's a huge lift, and people probably putting in their busiest days of the year on the holiday. So just a big shout out to our rangers and education and outreach staff for, again, making sure the safety of folks visiting the system and the health of our system made it intact through the holidays. So just wanted to put out that special acknowledgement to them. I also just want to point out that for those of you who are following the Rocky Mountain Greenway project, as you know, to create the underpass at 128 to connect Boulder and the City of Boulder and Boulder County open space lands to the north with Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge to the south. That underpass project first needed to have some soil sampling done. There was a pause in making sure the process for how that was done was going to be agreed upon by all the partners. That got worked through, and the soil sampling actually was conducted on July 1st. We're expecting some results coming back in early fall, and we're expecting around the October-November timeframe for Jefferson County, who's the lead on this, to come back and report back to the partners the results of the soil sampling. And when we know more, we'll let you know more.
Thanks.
So with that, we'll turn to the agenda items that are on our schedule tonight, and we'll start with on the draft 2020 operating budget and invite our Central Service Area Manager, Lauren Kilcoyne, up, and as well as Cole Moffitt.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't.
Hello. Lauren Kilcoyne, Central Services Manager, and this is Cole Moffitt, our Budget Analyst, here to talk about the draft 2020 operating budget. A little timeline update to start. So for the last 3 months, we've been focused on our Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, and this is the first month where we'll shift gears and start talking about the operating budget. We had initially planned on having the Finance Department here with us tonight to answer your cost allocation question specifically. They had a last-minute conflict, but they are planning to be at the August meeting. So I will do my best. I'm certainly not the expert that they are in cost allocation. You're also welcome, if it would be helpful, to email out any questions so we can make sure that everything gets included into the August packet. So a quick outline of tonight's presentation, an update on the budget process, what we've been up to since the June business meeting. Cole's going to walk you through the structure of our operating budget. We'll talk about our approach to the budget and some overall themes for 2020. We had one budget request, which is a reallocation only, but worth talking about, and have time for any questions that you might have. So since June, we've been very busy getting ready to bring our CIP, now that you've all seen it, more public with our peers in the city, with the planning board, and getting ready for city council in the fall. So after you all unanimously recommended it last month, we brought our CIP to a group called the Peer Review Team, and that is a cross-functional team of other city staff from other departments, and they get together to review all of the CIPs in the city to prepare for planning board. And the goal of that group is really to make sure that our projects align with approved plans, that we're not doing anything that hasn't been through appropriate public process, et cetera. And overall, we did receive very positive feedback from that group with some minor revisions that we've already incorporated and resubmitted. There were a bunch of questions about, the master plan, what's that going to mean for your CIP, what do the out years look like, not unlake the questions that you've all asked us over the past few months. So we did commit to post-adoption of the plan. We'll come back together with the planning board and do some hashing out of all of that before we come back through next year's budget process. But in terms of those intermediate steps we want to take for 2020, we had a lot of support for that. We also 2 weeks ago presented to the executive budget team, and that is our city manager, assistant city manager, the CFO, and a subset of department directors. And they're really looking at consistency citywide. Is our budget on track with what the city manager's budget message is going to be? Are we all being consistent? And again, a lot of support for the overall approach, and plenty of questions about the master plan as well. And so we did our best to address those. And what we focused on in that presentation, since that's internal staff primarily, was all of the changes that we've made over the last several years that sort of culminated in the 2020 budget. So we've reduced 9 positions from the department over many years. We've actually cut over $8 million since the flood out of the annual budget. So we're focused on a lot of very specific things about operations in that presentation, but got a lot of great feedback in the way that we've set ourselves up for 2020 with changing sales tax, et cetera. So far, so good. We have planning board in August as well before we go to study session with council in the fall. Cole will walk you through the numbers.
Yep. And so this is a look at the open space fund as a whole, including CIP and operating. So the CIP portion is the yellow slice on top and that very slim blue for the lottery on the top. So everything else represents the operating side. So we have debt payments, cost allocation, and the by far and large big blue piece is the service area operating budgets. And so if we exclude CIP and only look at operating, this is more what it looks like. And so you can see the bottom three slices, the trails, facilities, resources and stewardship, and community connections service areas are all hovering around the 20% mark, and that's more of the service delivery service areas carrying out the mission. And then on the top portions, you have central services service area and the office of the director. Those two kind of make up, the backbone that allow the other ones to operate. And then we have the cost allocation and the debt payments. So I want to walk through one of the service areas and how we then break down one of those pieces. And so this is an example of the resources and stewardship. And basically on all operating budgets, it comes down to personnel and non-personnel expenses. And so you can see, reading from the left to the right, you can see all the different work groups within the resource and stewardship area, such as cultural, ag, wildlife, et cetera. And reading to the right would make up the breakdown of their total budget. And so standard relates to all standard employees, salaries and benefits. Temp and seasonal is what that means, just saying, salary benefits for seasonal and temporary employees, and those two columns make up personnel expenses. So then restricted funds and NPE, non-personnel, make up your non-personnel, and then for a sum all the way to the right, total operating. So you can see by this, by far and away, the biggest piece of operating is staffing, salaries and benefits. And you can see it's about $3 million for standard FTE and almost knocking on the door of $1 million for temp and seasonal. And just to highlight what a restricted fund is, that's kind of money that we budget for, but we don't necessarily have the say, or it's a sunk cost. So that $230 in water resources admin, those are our annual ditch assessment fees. So the money we pay annually to own the water that we own shares in. And then in ecological stewardship, a little bit over $200,000. That is set aside for prairie dogs. So the general fund is helping us out by funding the soil health and prairie dog coordinator positions, and we are making an equal match of about $200,000 set aside in our funds dedicated to prairie dogs. And so you can kind of see the bottom right corner, I believe that's 4.9, but if we were to go around and start swapping and trading, you can kind of see that it's temp, seasonal, and the NPE that are the levers that we can use then to reallocate in between in any decisions that we make, master plan included. And so if we go back, or forward, sorry. So that was just a breakdown.
Can you go back for just one quick question?
Sure.
If there are consultants, are they under NPE or? Okay, thanks.
And so that was a breakdown of the yellow slice, resources and stewardship. And the rest of the service areas are pretty similar in that breakdown. And so then I want to highlight the cost allocation and debt payments portions. And here you can see the change from 19 to 20. In the open space debt service, we reduced about $1.5 million, and that was due to the roll-off of the 2006 bonds. We made the final payment in 2019, so it came off the books in 2020. And the cost allocation, you can see, increased about $30,000 from 19 to 20. And I'm sure, as you're aware, it's in every 2-year cycle that we have say in the inputs. And since this year is the off year, it was going to raise about 3%, but central finance only raised it 1.5 due to the level of service that they studied and saw that we were actually receiving from HR, finance, et cetera. And so budget reductions in a whole, remember this, what we talked about now is only the operating side. So we reduced about 1.5 in debt, but we also reduced 1.3 a few months ago in CIP. And so because of both of those, the natural roll-off of debt and the intentional decrease in CIP, along with improved revenue projections this year, we deemed it not necessary to cut on the operating side, which is something that we'll reevaluate annually as we continue to move into a constrained environment.
And if you remember, this was last year as we went through the 2019 budget process. In addition to cutting CIP and debt, we had asked every service area to cut $150,000 out of the operating budget. And we had at that time projected we would need to cut $50,000 per service area going into 2020. So all of these things coming together, being really diligent and responsible about the way we're handling reductions, makes a big difference that we didn't have to cut additional from service areas this year. So that's not to say we won't have to in future years. We keep working with finance to understand the economic forecast and what's going on in open space. But that was actually a pretty big win for this year, that we didn't have to then go through and look at operating cuts or programmatic changes, significant programmatic changes.
That's very helpful. Is this almost 3 million, 19 and 20?
This is
The
just
two budget years?
from 2019 to 2020. This is 2.8.
Just the one budget year
As we're
difference?
going into 2020, we're cutting an additional 2.8
Correct.
through
And the number for the previous year was? About?
5.4. That's rough off the top of my head, but it was significant last year. We paid off several bump of notes, the 07 bond, CIP, and 150 per service area operating. So last year was, being as conservative as we were last year allowed this year to go a little bit more smooth.
So the 2 years is approximately 7 million-ish?
8.
Yeah.
8, okay. And the loss from the budget cuts from the tax sunsetting is like 9 million,
About
right?
9. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not.
So
to
that gets
say-
us to, okay.
We're
Thanks.
closer. We're not there yet. If you look at the fund financial that was in your packet, there is still, this is the first year that there's a gap between revenues and expenditures. Normally, every year, we would have expenses within annual revenues. A few years ago, we said, we don't want to make drastic immediate cuts. We want to space them out over
Right.
many years. So we will continue that strategy over the next several years, and we have the fund balance saved to be able to get us through. So we're not doing anything extreme. We're just making logical, gradual reductions where it makes sense. So that's the goal. So I do anticipate some level of reduction for next year, but things change so quickly. You look at how the economy is doing and,
A lot of variable.
yeah, a lot of variables.
That's very helpful, thank you.
Sure.
Can I follow on with that? This is the last document for the budget you're going to produce before potentially a sales tax measure in the fall. It's being discussed at council and other places. How do you think this informs that?
The materials for tonight are a piece of the puzzle. Yeah, we've been working really closely with Katie Joling, our executive budget officer, and Cheryl Patelli, who's our CFO, to get ready for the council meeting on the 23rd, where what they want to do is look citywide at what the needs are going to be and how does open space fit in that puzzle. They've had the library master plan, now ours, and then there's several others coming down the line, and so just wanting to make sure they're responsible to the whole city organization. But we've been preparing a lot of materials for them to get ready for that conversation, certainly have shared all of the things that you see there. And then those out-year reductions that are scheduled, part of that conversation is how is quantifying that impact. So if we're not done making reductions, what's the so what of the other reductions that might be coming? So I think that's the story that we don't get into in this packet because we're focused on 1 year.
Right.
But that's what we're working on with Katie.
So I think that's my only concern is I think you folks have done a remarkable job over the last few years getting us ready for this point. I just worry sometimes that those measures may hide what's going to happen the next few years. And of course, that's what needs to inform the decision of council, of voters, and things like that. So
No, it's
you can see what I'm struggling with.
absolutely, yeah, point well taken. And I think, and Darren's up, I think, after this presentation, and she looks more broadly at the next 10 years, right? And all of the strategies and what are the dollar signs associated and what does that mean for the longer term outlook? So we are in this strange interim period where we're saying 2020, we're confident. Beyond that, let's look at all the things Darren's going to be bringing up tonight. Yeah.
And as long as we sort of highlight that fact in our materials so that somebody doesn't just take a quick look at this and say, well, we're good.
No, I appreciate the comment. And I mean, even as we went through the CIP presentations, there were real decisions. I mean, we went from 12 million in requests to 3.6 in what we're funding. So there are things we're not getting to, and that's a real part of the story.
So will the cost of implementing the top priorities in the master plan be in the financial chapter for the master plan as opposed to in any information you give us?
Correct. And we've got 3 scenarios in the master plan of what that could look like. And we went through a process of $1 through $5 signs, which you would have seen at your study session. And $5 signs, the strategy is going to cost a lot to fully implement. Under those 3 scenarios, how much would we be putting towards each strategy. So I think we'll get into that a little bit more later. But yeah, the 2020 budget would not be the place that shows up. I think it is that awkward place where we're building a one-year budget at the same time as we're doing a master plan.
Got it.
Thank you.
Sure. So you're going to be very sick of me saying this. You probably already are. Process improvements, business efficiencies. This is like our world. We talk about it all the time. And really, the 2020 budget has benefited so much from the things we've done over 5 years. Investments in technology, we talked about it last month, but I'll harp on it a little bit. Systems like Learning at Work, which is our learning management system for staff. Fair Harbor, where customers can buy things over their computer and not necessarily over the counter at the office. Beehive will be our asset management system. These are 3, but there are many more examples of where we've made really significant investments in staff time and dollars. And we're now seeing in 2020 the payoff for that, where we're able to repurpose staff capacity, repurpose dollars. Reallocation is how we've handled really the last couple of budget cycles without needing to say, we need an addition to our base budget. We're saying we made reductions, and in other places we were able to repurpose dollars to meet needs, and that's really where we need to be in a fiscally constrained situation where we are right now. So the goal of all of this, to tie it back to what Cole's saying, we want to maximize our dollars in those 3 service areas that he mentioned, and we want to maximize service delivery and make sure that we're best stewarding those funds. We also know that we need to maintain flexibility to meet emergent needs. There are plenty of things we're not anticipating right now that will come up over the next year, and we want to be able to react to those. And even things like prairie dog management and soil health, we were able to accelerate funding because we had been really responsible in other areas. So we want to make sure that we're flexible and we're agile as we're moving into 2020 and beyond that. I'm not going to bore you again about work planning. I don't find it boring, but I know we talked about it at length last month. And just like we invested in work planning over the last couple of years, we've been investing in our organizational structure and position control. Our goal as we went through all of these budget reductions was that we wanted to avoid a reduction in force and really think about how we could retain our staff capacity. So we have a system in place where we meet regularly to focus on vacancies and attrition. So when there's natural turnover, we're meeting and talking about the best use of that position. And over the past couple of years, sometimes that has been to expire it and save dollars so that we could be flexible to meet a new need. So sometimes that is repurposing a position to a place to an area of growth, and sometimes it's a refill as is because the way that position is currently written is really what we need. So a couple examples of the repurposing. We had a special projects position that was in engineering and project management, and that was Elliot Labonte, who's now working for Community Vitality in the budget world and doing a fantastic job. So we spent quite a bit of time as staff trying to figure out how to handle the needs of that position as it used to exist and meet emerging needs. And we're able to move some workload around and actually convert that vacant position to another agricultural coordinator. So recognizing that that's an area of growth and a place we needed to make an investment, worked really hard to be able to make that happen by using a vacant position. Same thing with a crew lead. We had one of our crew leads took another position elsewhere, and we were able to look at how that crew, that seasonal and temporary crew, could be supported differently, and we were able to repurpose that position to a vegetation technician, another area where we know we've needed capacity. So this is a way, it's not as immediate as CIP or NPE, but it's a way we can gradually shift capacity to where we need it. We also know that our staff are very good at their jobs and know better, certainly than I do, what needs to happen structurally to facilitate work. So we have a number of staff-led innovations. The resources and stewardship work group structure, John was working with his folks for a really long time to understand how forestry works with vegetation and how agriculture works with ecology. And they went through a process of coming up with a number of scenarios how they could be structured and made some really real changes to supervisory leadership and the way those work groups are structured to facilitate the work of those programs. We also piloted a number of things in the seasonal and temporary world. The trails crews were cross-trained in vegetation management. So in between trail projects or during a down week, they can be put to work lending extra capacity to vegetation. So it's easy to look at the org chart and think that we invest, X million in one service area and X million in another. We really act as one, and those things cross those boundaries all the time. So looking at ways that within our current framework, we can make some innovative changes. And lastly, we're always trying to keep an eye towards the future, be fiscally responsible, sustainable, transparent, and maintain contingencies. We are a very sales tax dependent organization. We learned a lot from the flood. Our contingency reserves were why we had dollars available immediately to respond to the flood. So those are things that we don't want to go away. They're things that are reflected in the financial sustainability strategies in the master plan. We also need to continue to partner well citywide. I am certainly not the expert on living wage or minimum wage or what's happening in the local economy. We need our partners for that. And so there are some changes coming down the line that we're working closely with them on. Council is considering an increase to the living wage. That has impacts to our seasonal and temporary budgets. So we keep the dialogue open with all of our partners, and that's what lets us do our jobs well. And all of this comes together in our one budget request that we did not need to ask additional dollars for and reallocated from existing budget, and that's around prairie dog management and soil health. So as Cole mentioned, the general fund will support 2 fixed-term positions. Open space will also extend 1 fixed-term wildlife ecologist. In a little bit of context, that position was created during the flood and funded by a community development block grant for non-FEMA flood recovery. Most of the ecological work was not FEMA eligible. And then when Heather needed to step up and work on Prairie Dog Working Group, this employee kind of held down the fort on everything else to free her up to do that. So by extending that position will allow our current capacity to continue, plus those 2 positions from the general fund. As Cole mentioned, we've reallocated the $200,000 for non-personnel budget, and then every year as we go through our CIP, we'll see what we can dedicate annually there. So for 2020, and what you recommended last month, that was $459,000. So I think that's what we have for you tonight, and happy to answer any questions that you have. And again, apologies about cost allocation. I'll do my best, but we'll come back in August with more information.
I have a few questions. The first is, so one of the more significant changes was that $4 million that had been reserved for the campus vision got removed from the reserves, and then starting in 2021, some money is again reserved. I wonder, could you just sort of, obviously the $4 million, it's not an expenditure because it was in a reserve bucket, but still it's a significant chunk in understanding the overall fund balance after reserves. Could you sort of walk through the rationale for whatever the verb would be, de-reserving the campus vision?
Yeah,
and in the process, could you also just say a little bit about where we are with all that?
I'll do my best, and I'll tag in Jim and Dan too if I address it fully.
This is the line down here that's called long-term office space, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Where to begin? So going back a couple of years, as we were doing our space planning, we had a number of scenarios on the table. One was, are we going to have to buy a parcel of land? That raised the cost estimate significantly. Then when we started focusing on Cherryville, we knew we wanted to look at Cherryville as a preferred location, but there could be fatal flaws in that we weren't foreseeing. So we wanted to have some options B and C and D, et cetera. So we had moved on from thinking we were going to buy a parcel to thinking it was going to be a building, an office building, or repurposing existing buildings. And those cost estimates have changed as we've gone through the space planning. So what we had decided a couple of months ago, given changes in the sales tax increments, given all of the many projects that we needed to get to coming off the flood, dealing with maintenance backlog, all of that, we really felt like it was not the time to be setting aside that much money for our office space. We are now in a functioning space that we can all fit in and be safe in. And we had the option of, we're pursuing an option of staying there an extra couple of years and using those dollars during a fiscally constrained time and putting them to work on maintenance projects. So what we'll be focusing on starting in the 3rd and 4th quarter this year is really the business case and the feasibility analysis of the Cherryville location, understanding the costing of renting versus owning, what would rehab take, what would it look like, what would it cost or look like to still be on multiple campuses now that the Ute and Annex also have clean water and are safe and can house staff. So I think it was realizing we needed to put the dollars to work on other things. And needing to do some more internal planning later this year to understand what comes next. But am I missing anything?
No, that's a great summary, yeah. So when we went into the hub situation, it was the understanding that it would be a 5-year scenario. And basically what the message that I brought out to staff this spring is it's more looking like a 7 to 8 scenario. 7 years, and of course, we're already, I think almost 2 years into our lease, about 1.5 years, 2 years into our lease. So that was a conversation. So we've done a number of things knowing that we're going to have a little bit longer of a stay there. We just put out a survey. How's life at the hub doing? What type of improvements can we make if things aren't working for you in certain areas, trying to get a better understanding of what's working, what's not. We also made some nice investments over at the Uten Annex where our crews are going to be housed. They, like I said, they now have clean water. So we feel like we have that part of our administrative system ready to go for many years ahead. So now the question will be is how long do we stay at the hub? If we don't stay at the hub, what happens then? And part of that analysis is lessons learned. What's working really well that we want to take elsewhere if we do leave at some point? And if we don't leave, what do we need to change to make life even better? So
I'm sure part of that whole equation is also thinking, well, what could Cherryvale be if it's not your central office?
That's right, and instead of having to just sit there, and instead of keeping our rangers at a very dysfunctional, I don't mind using that word, location, headquarters that they're in now, they are moving in August to Cherryvale North, which will be a great location for them. It's almost the perfect size. We had to make some improvements over there, such as to support the armory and to make sure that it's a secure building with the right kind of doors and stuff. But so some minor investments over there. Now for the next few years, our Rangers are going to have a wonderful headquarters. So it feels good to me to be able to utilize Cherryville in some form or fashion. And part of that internal study would say is, okay, if we all don't move back and occupy Cherryville, what would Cherryville South, the existing Cherryville South Ranch house, what kind of purpose could that serve us?
Is the rent for the hub captured under central services?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was previously under Trails and Facilities, just because the facilities group managed the project, but during last year's budget cycle, that seemed to, when you looked at the numbers of resources and stewardship, Trails and Facilities, it looked like we had this huge extra investment in trails that wasn't entirely accurate. So we moved it into central services. But as I said earlier, there's so many places where that exists, and we're acting as one, and funds are shared across service areas, but that was why we moved into central services.
So on central services, most of the changes from 2019 to 2020 seemed, fairly intuitive with my understanding of what's going on. The one that did jump out was the about $600,000 increase from 2019 to 2020 for central services. I don't know if that has something to do with the rent at the hub, but the general question is sort of, what was going on there?
Yeah, 500 and some odd of that is the hub payment. And
so there was no hub rent in 2019, or was it one of those deals where the landlord, landlords sometimes, backload the rent to help defray your moving expenses and stuff, but I don't.
That's a very astute question. So a few things happened. One was the rent money that we did pay in the current year, 2019, shows up in Trails and Facilities and not in central services. So there should be an offsetting decrease there in Trails and Facilities, which is confusing because then you have so many other things shifting into Trails and Facilities. It doesn't look like a true one-to-one, but that is what happened. When we moved last year, the landlord did give us a credit for some of those months' rent because we were doing major renovations. And if you remember, the landlord also contributed $1 million towards those renovations. So further confusion in the accounting there in terms of how it looks in a summary, but all of those moving parts resulted in eventually central services now has a lease payment, and it was removed from Trails.
And is the master plan effort also in the central services bucket?
That was funded, the plan itself, the master capital planning effort was funded in the CIP, and that was over a couple of years. And I think the last year we funded it was last year. And then anything that hadn't been spent against those contracts would have just been carried through our capital carryover into the current year. So on the fund financial, it lives in that carryover ATB operating in 2019.
I wanted to ask about that line. Say a little bit more about that line
The
before you
carryover
go on.
line?
Yeah.
Sure, I would love to talk about that. A couple of years ago, that number was 35 million, so I'm very proud of it being 10 million. And there's a reason for that. So-
Almost 11.
Yes, true, almost 11, fair call. So we had been, as we were issuing bonds, including the 2014 bond, we issued a 2014 bond for $10 million. During those years, we continued to fund the acquisition CIP at 5.4 million. So our goal was spend the 10 million bond within 3 years, let this other CIP build up so that once the bond is spent, you still have acquisition dollars available to you to manage priority acquisitions as the sales tax increments change. So last year, I believe we spent about $20 million in acquisitions, Lippincott, Boulder Valley, all of these high priority acquisitions that we've been working on for a really long time. So what's left in that 10 million is some acquisition money and some multi-year capital projects. So things we've funded over several years would be like the 4 Mile project, Anemone project, where we contributed dollars each year until, so for example, like planning dollars, design dollars, scoping to get ready for then we would have the major construction expenditure. So I would say, how much of that 11 million is acquisition? 7?
I think about 9.
A little bit over 9.
Yep. So, and then the difference would be those projects that we fund over multiple years in the CIP.
Thank you.
The carryover also allowed us to, and the CIP approved by the board, to have the acquisition CIP go from that 5.4 to 700,000.
Right.
And we felt we could do that based on the carryover, that planned carryover that we sort of had in place.
Is that it, Tom?
Yeah, ask whatever.
I have a couple of questions about FEMA items, and if you could just sort of summarize for us what the anticipated FEMA flood reimbursement is, and then down at the bottom, as Tom said, the FEMA de-obligation, whatever that means.
Sure. You're talking about the revenue line for reimbursement and the de-obligation?
The second line up at the top and the last line at the bottom.
Sure. Anticipated FEMA flood reimbursement. The overall dollars that we've expected back from FEMA have not changed, but the timing of when we expect to receive those dollars has changed fairly significantly. And the FEMA regulations have changed specifically around how they want to see reimbursement requests. So it used to be that as we would finish a major project, we would do all our documentation on procurement, expenditures, whatever, and submit that for reimbursement, and that those funds were coming back pretty quickly, like within a couple of months. The change was that they would like to see entire project worksheets be submitted together for reimbursement. So an example, we call it Bold 24, which is small trail repair, has over 100 projects on it. So we can't submit those for reimbursement until the final project on that project
All 100
worksheet is completed. That has delayed things significantly. And we've got a couple things where, like permit compliance, the project might be done, but we have to close out our permit, and that takes a little while. So we can't submit for reimbursement until that happens. So things that are completely done, we just finished Eggleston 4, which was the last project on the ditch project worksheet for FEMA. Trailheads is complete, so that's been submitted. I'm sure I'm missing some things. Fencing we're working on now. But really, those engineered trails and small trails where the bulk of the work was done, we haven't been able to fully submit. So working with Joel Wagner, he's coordinating the flood recovery efforts for the city, we worked with him to adjust the timeline on those projections to just say, let's anticipate this is going to take a while to get the funding back.
So by 2022, we should have all the FEMA reimbursements.
That is the goal. And to touch on the de-obligation reserve, that number also we work with Finance, Joel Wagner, to get. And the way that works is once FEMA reimburses you, they can come back and audit your reimbursement for, is it 7 years from the final site that's completed? And so you keep a contingency reserve in case they want any of their reimbursement back. Yeah. We're going to be living with this for a very long time from an accounting perspective. But that's what that number is.
And is there a drop dead date when they close the books on any disaster, or?
It is, it's actually, I believe, and this could be wrong, but I believe what Joel told me, it's the last site in the disaster zone. So it's not even just the city of Boulder, it's the county, all of our neighboring communities that were impacted by the flood. I believe I want to say it's 7 years from the final in the disaster area. That the terminology I'm using might be slightly off, but it's going to be a long time.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's very helpful, thanks.
Go ahead.
Warren, maybe I should know this, but the absence of any money in the capital planning study line for this year, what? And then it kind of resurrects itself for out years?
Yeah.
Kind of what's the deal with that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So we had funded for example, the master plan.
Right.
We had funded it last year, though we knew we'd be working on it, so we funded it enough to carry through. We had to encumber a contract, and so regardless of the timeline that we were going to be paying that out on, we needed to encumber it last year. Same goes with some of the ISPs where we had programmed dollars either in the current year budget or last year budget, even though those projects will continue multi-year. So as we completed the effort for 2020, the major capital planning efforts had already been funded that we'll be doing in 2020. There are some smaller things like we had $10,000 for the race and equity project, which you might consider capital planning. We considered it a community connections project. So there are a couple things where you could categorize it either planning or another category, and the way it shook out, we didn't choose the capital planning option. But that doesn't mean work won't be done in the planning group. They're certainly going to be busy next year.
So relating it back to the master plan, actually, so the update of the grassland plan, for example, which I think we're anticipating at least could start in 2020. So that does this zero number reflect that, or how is that
Yeah,
kind of
great question.
incorporated?
And if I'm incorrect, John can correct me, but I believe what we're looking at there is whether or not that's going to be a staff-led effort. So is it going to be staff-led or will it be consultant-led? And if it's staff-led, it would show up under your operating expenditure in the planning work group. So I think right now we made the assumption that we'll have a staff person assigned, and certainly that could change. I don't know enough about that. But capital expenditures you're looking at, is it going to cost you more than $50,000 for a capital plan?
Right. Thanks.
Does that cover it? I'm getting the good enough? Okay.
I have one more question. In the fourth line, lease and maintenance revenue,
Yes.
there's a big drop between 18 and 19.
1.9 million to 1.3 million?
Yeah.
Yes, so the 2018 number includes the $1 million one-time reimbursement from the landlord for the improvements on the hub. And so that would have decreased it $1 million, but then the increase came from Jefferson County's portion of the Lippincott bump-up,
Which is in the same place.
which is in the same place. So
Okay.
we show us paying the full expenditure, but then on the
Okay.
revenue side, we show Jeffco's share coming in. So
Thank you.
those two transactions would be the difference.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on the budget? Okay.
No, and thank you for the clarity of the whole thing.
If I could just if you anticipate having questions going into the August meeting, whether it is cost allocation or more questions that you have, if it's possible to submit those email questions, I would say at least a week ahead of time, that would be wonderful, just to gives us some time to prepare some answers that we could even include in the memo as opposed to just coming in verbally. So if you give us enough leeway, we could put answers in the memo, but also just enough, if you're not able to do that, just enough time for us to prepare and to come in to talk to you from a verbal standpoint. So
And
appreciate
you
it.
understand, at least for me, and I think it's general, our cost allocation questions are like, how does it work? I mean,
Yeah.
that's
and
basically the,
I could speak to process generally, but more specific things are where I'll get tripped up. But if it's all, should we just push that
Sure.
to August, or should I?
Oh,
Dive in.
do you want a couple of minute process?
That's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple of
Yes,
questions
no.
anyway, so
Okay.
yeah, that'd be great.
So just high-level overview. Cost allocation is something municipal governments use widely to understand how internal service departments, city manager, IT, finance, et cetera, contribute or charge indirect costs to what would be considered like a direct service department like open space. So we have worked with the same consultant for a number of years to develop our cost allocation plan. And the way that process works, it's very interesting. The consultant goes out and interviews all of the internal service departments and says, first of all, what are the functions and services that you provide as an organization? Second of all, who do you provide them to? And on what basis do you provide them? So some city manager might use a per case or amount of time that something takes. Another department like HR would say, well, we have a full FTE HR liaison assigned to open space, so they might allocate on an FTE basis. Somebody like finance might say, we have to review X number of contracts and purchase orders a year for open space. And so they determine the basis they want to charge us on. The consultant works very hard on pulling all of that together and understanding what to charge then open space. Then they pull us and the other direct service departments into a room and they interview us and say, does this all seem right? Yes or no? And let's talk about where it's a no. And I'd say 80% of it is like, yep, that makes sense. And 20% of it is where we go back and forth and talk about what we think we receive and what we don't receive. And also what services we provide for the general fund. So real estate is something that comes up all the time. We've had the general fund pay for 0.27 FTE of a property agent for us for a number of years, and that's that person's time on citywide real estate matters. So it is a give and take. Both parties get interviewed, and we talk about those places where we're not totally in agreement. And this does get updated every couple of years. So are we 100% happy all the time? No. But for the most part, we feel confident in what we're getting and, you know, what those charges are. So high level, that's what that process looks like.
So in the information that was provided, there's a line that's called units. I don't understand, or do you know how units are determined, and then there's percent allocation, how that's determined? Because that wasn't altogether clear to me.
Yeah, and you got the very detailed plan, so you can see all of those.
Yeah, thanks for that.
A whole ream of paper.
Units, from my understanding, and I'll confirm this, but units would be that cost allocation basis. So if they're charging us based on number of FTE or number of contracts or whatever, that'd be the unit that they're charging us. And then maybe we take, I don't know, less than one FTE, 0.67, so that would be your percentage of unit. I'll confirm that, though.
Because it varies dramatically.
Oh, it does, yeah, and that's having so many bases on, you can cost allocate based on time or people or number
Then
of inquiries.
the percent allocation then kind of, I guess theoretically reflects the unit.
Exactly.
But how does that get determined?
They would look at, for example, with the clerk's office, how many overall items does the city have, and then how many of those are open spaces, and that would be the way that they would charge us for that basis or that unit.
Okay.
It is quite the spreadsheet that we look at, and I can't remember which version of it you saw, but those break down, and you can see exactly like what percentage of FTE you're getting charged from a department and things like that.
So we talked about this question before, but the real estate services that the department provides the city, I couldn't find that in the material that we got. Is it in there, or how is that reflected?
Yeah, I think, so the way that they accounted for it, 0.27 of it showed up in the general fund paying for our person's salary, our employee's salary. 12,000 of it showed up in cost allocation. And going back even further than that, the general fund used to pay 1.27 FTE, and we transferred one of those FTE to be managed by city attorney's office. So real estate shows up in like 3 different ways, which is confusing. But I think the cost allocation portion, if I recall, was like $12,000, and then there was the salary portion that showed up in our direct budgets.
Okay. And there was a section called general government, but there were all the other departments were in there, so what constitutes general government?
I do not know that off the top of my head, do you?
That's this building.
I will get back to you on that one.
Because there's a fair amount of money in that pot.
It's not off the top of my head, but I'll look at it and get you that for next month.
And I had one other on the, in the memo, you said there were some differences between how actual costs and budget basis. So can you tell us how those differed or kind of?
Yeah. In the 2018 plan, it was the first time we had switched from an actuals costing to a budget basis. So what happens is, so say you think you're going to provide X number of service to open space in your HR, but then one of your employees leaves and that position's vacant, you're not able to provide the level of service you thought. And so then you wait and you do a tally of actuals and how much you actually charge the department. The problem with that is if you use actuals, but then the next year you've hired that position back and you can provide that level of service, then there's this big gap in, it seems like a big jump in what you're going to be offering, even though it was your intention to offer it all along, but for whatever reason you couldn't. So in the 2018 plan, we moved to a budget basis to say that's going to be the thing that allows internal service departments to better plan for how they're going to support you. So let's assume things will go the way we think. These are the services we're going to provide, and this is the budget that we need to make that happen. The nice thing about the way these plans work, because they're every other year, they still do provide us an opportunity to say things didn't go quite as planned. So that's the example that Cole pointed to. From a budget basis, our cost allocation would have grown $60,000. But in looking at what those departments think they can actually provide us for 2020, they're scaling back a little bit and saying, no, only pay us that $30,000 more instead of that $60,000.
So there's an adjustment on it based on previous information.
Exactly. Yep. And then we'll have the full update again over the next year to the whole plan.
What determines whether something's charged to OSMP or open space? It's a little confusing that there are two separate lines, two separate buckets.
The open space fund versus the open space department. I guess in theory, the open space department, you could charge something to the lottery fund or to the portion that comes from that general fund transfer. Really, most of what you're charging to open space is going to be in the open space fund. And so it seems an unnecessary complication.
Okay.
Lauren, I had one other question, not on cost allocation, but on the contingency reserve. I think in the memo it says the guidelines for accrued benefits changed.
Yes.
So how did the change affect the reserve?
Decrease the reserve. So if you look at the contingency reserve, that's where we say 20%, a contingency reserve of 20%. And that's 20% of your operating budgets and your debt payments. But then on top of that, you have things that are mandated for us to save for TABOR requirements, the FEMA reserve. So when we looked at the vacation, the payouts for folks who retire, the sick and vacation payouts, it used to be that they would have us save to be able to pay out if all of us left at once. Well, we're not all going to leave at once. So they said, over the last 3 years, what's been the average amount of turnover and payout that's needed to happen? And so they've adjusted that number down. So we saved, my fund financial.
Well, it looks like 90%.
From 490,000 to 48,000.
Yeah, 90% of.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah, right.
And it doesn't impact that we are still also saving that 20% contingency reserve, so 20% operating in debt.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Lauren and
All right.
Cole.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Cole. All right, next, got more fun stuff. We're going to talk master plan with Darren Wagner and Mark Davison.
So I have to admit, I've been doing a lot of sitting lately. So I'm going to stand here if you don't mind.
I thought it was me.
No. Okay, so we are here tonight as a very simple check-in on our progress. We know that the big meeting we've all been looking forward to for a couple of years is coming up in a few weeks. We sort of see tonight as almost like a process committee meeting, where we're just wanting to update you on where we're at, don't have really the intention of going into the content so much, but just, again, wanting to make sure you're comfortable, you have a sense of what's coming in a few weeks. So in part of that, we want to prepare you, talk about what we've been doing to address the feedback that we've heard so far, and then talk about the next steps and make sure we don't have any questions at this point. So one of the things that we heard in a number of different ways is to talk about and highlight the work that staff is already doing. And so by way of an example, what we are highlighting here is work that we're already doing around managing increasing use. And what this is allowing us to do as we get into making implementation clearer and helping the public and the community understand what comes next after the master plan, it's letting us set up that conversation by saying, here's what we're already doing, and then here are the enhancements or refinements that we're looking to do. So to play out this particular example, one of the follow-up actions as it relates to our strategy around managing increasing use is to update what we've been calling the Visitor Master Plan, knowing now that we have a system-wide, departmental-wide master plan. We might have to change that name to make it clear, but essentially updating the 2005 Visitor Master Plan. Some of the other related feedback that we had heard is that the process that we had laid out in the first draft of the plan was a little obscure, or it was too grounded in the federal process, and it was an opportunity to describe what we meant more in our own language. And so that is what this diagram is starting to do, and really it's a very typical adaptive management cycle if you look at it. So one of the things, though, that we would start with is working with the board to confirm our approach, to confirm our scope to this when we get to that point. Then, of course, through a typical process, we would look at our existing guidance, data, trends, as well as then go through a process of establishing desired conditions and what those indicators are. So we do have work started in the VMP as well as other guidance where we would use those to inform the process. Then from there, based on those desired conditions, look at the gap between existing conditions and desired conditions, and then what is the guidance that we need to either update or add into our toolkit to get us closer to those desired conditions. We would then, as in typical fashion, go through a process of then piloting the particular efforts that would come out of that, as well as full implementation when we know those are successful. And then the typical process of continuing to use the data around our monitoring efforts to understand what's working, what's not, and make adjustments in consultation with board and council if needed. One of the things that this process has helped us clarify, and hopefully this helps clarify things for you as well, is that as part of the step around determining the visitor use management guidance, the conversation will necessarily come up around the appropriateness of visitor capacity. And that's another theme that we heard in the study session and follow-up with the board, that we needed to be clearer about what that meant. And so following best practices in terms of visitor use management around the country, the recommendations are that we, as part of that system-wide look at desired conditions and appropriate management, make that determination whether establishing visitor capacities is a reasonable tool. And if it's determined that yes, let's explore that for a number of reasons, then this would be the broad steps that we would take in the process of talking about that. So one of those is, identifying the locations where that analysis is needed. And that may sound simplistic, but really that's actually a complicated conversation to have. Once we've done that, then of course go in again in a more site-specific way and look at existing guidance, data, and trends. Use that then to also understand what are the limiting attributes. And by that we mean things like canyon walls, where you literally cannot accommodate more people. Or cultural resources that are particularly vulnerable to use. Things like that that would actually constrain our ability to accommodate more than a certain number of visitors. And if in that process we've continued to confirm that this is a reasonable tool and that these places it's feasible to achieve that, then we would identify the capacity numbers. So that is, we wanted to be clear and lay out what we meant more. And so this has been an attempt to do that. I wanted to just preview that.
So one thing we were struck by, I think at least a couple of us, and I like what you're doing here, is that model will probably be used for every strategy. and implementation. If you think about it.
This model?
This is an adaptive planning model. And I think if you look at any of our strategies, whether it's ecosystem health, whether it's effects of climate change, whatever,
Yep.
I think we're going to use that model everywhere. And so I think some of us are just wondering, should we introduce it as a general adaptive planning model when we're talking about implementation generally, and not just link it to visitor use? So that was just, we were struck with that thought.
That's a good point.
Like in the implementation section that we've talked about being near the end?
Right. What we've also attempted to do in the master plan is not to indicate that this level of comprehensive planning is needed for every strategy.
Right.
That
Yeah.
we feel like on most of our strategies, we have plenty of existing guidance that we can move right to implementation. But during those more comprehensive initiatives, which might involve a number of different strategies coming together or a complex area, then we may need to move into a comprehensive management type of process.
I think that's a good introduction to the implementation.
And I think we put in language to try to explain when we're able to move right out of the gate versus those things. Yeah, you guys, this is complicated. We're going to need some planning.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense to me, too. And let me go back and not leave that yet.
Okay.
Because that, to me, says that you've also revised what I think you're calling the handle for RRSE 7.
Yes, which now has become RRSE 1, which is the new handle is in your board packet as attachment C.
No, I missed this.
It looks like this. It's got colors.
Well, yeah, okay, so let me talk about that for a minute.
Okay, sure.
Because that says update a collaborative approach to managing increasing, and based on what we just discussed, I think it's more appropriate to go back to manage increasing visitation and then describe managing increasing visitation as something like develop and implement adaptive management approaches to address visitation growth, impacts to natural resources and OSMP infrastructure, and support positive visitor experiences. As a description of manage increasing visitation, rather than referring to this, if this is going to be in the implementation section at the end. Because we don't want to just refer to it for RRSE 1.
Right. Okay, let me make sure I understand and hear from the rest of the board on this too. So I think what you're suggesting, Karen, is that the handle for this needs to be directive as it relates, go back to an original version around manage increasing visitation, and to make sure that the adaptive management framework is clear as sort of a framework for the entire master plan.
Yes, and the description of manage increasing visitation deletes verbiage that refers to this, because this is going to apply more broadly.
It will, and I think, I just, again, wanted to check with the rest of the board, because I think what we heard at the study session was suggestions to sort of decode our handles and be clear about what we mean.
Yeah, right.
So if one of the things is to update the VMP, which we might need to change it to the VUMP, but if it's just somehow we needed to capture that in the handle itself. But if the intention isn't changing, then perhaps it's just a wording.
Yeah.
I certainly support Karen's suggestion. The thing that is a little troubling to me is the word collaboration in this particular context, because I do think at the study session we did talk about collaboration, but I think if you put it in the title, it skews the perception of actually what the focus should be. I think that, collaboration should be kind of a subsidiary or subset to accomplishing the, managing the visitor use or what.
Yeah, like a paragraph in the text or something that talks about what we talked about at the last meeting, which is collaborating with sister agencies and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, the specific conversation was with, sister land management agencies was the collaboration, but using that word generally, that could be interpreted to be all sorts of things. And I think that kind of gets us in the ditch where we're going to have to come back and, probably deal with a perception again that, that's not exactly what we meant. So, anyway.
I would like to push back. Managing increased visitation is code for people are bad. And I disagree that people are bad on the system. I think that people can bring value to the system. And I have some comments along those lines later with some cute pictures of my kids. And to tug at the heartstrings. But I appreciated some moderating language being included here because I think that the approach to managing increased visitation is really going to be the crux of this. If we need to go in a mindful way, as you outlined on the slide that we're not showing right now, about what do we actually mean when we're talking about managing increased visitation? Where is visitation appropriate? What are the goals we're trying to meet?
Yep.
And if we just say manage increased visitation as our handle, it strongly implies to me that we are saying people are not welcome here.
What would you suggest as an alternative?
I have not found a good alternative. Sadly. Yeah. I know. I hate people who complain and don't have a solution. I just did it.
It's okay, we still like you.
Thanks.
I think what some of us are struggling with is if you put update a collaborative approach at the beginning, that becomes a goal. And I'm not sure updating an approach is really the goal. The goal is, and it maybe needs more words than, we could have a longer thing that says, accommodate increasing visitation while protecting this and the visitor experience. And a lot of other goals are embedded in there. I admit, we just settled on sort of a shorthand, which says manage increasing visitation. And I think, frankly, we're never going to stop people coming to open space.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't have any way to do that. So I think part of what I think we're looking for is unpacking the dynamic of increasing visitation in its different aspects. And there are many different aspects. It gets a little bit to what you said about identifying locations and things like that. There's time, place, type of use, everything else. And that all is part of managing increasing visitation. We're not going to build a wall and keep everybody out. And I think that's part of the value of giving more examples like what you're doing. And I've got examples here that I think we could add to your list. I like your list, though. It's examples of things we've already done. And I'll give you just one. And you're going to have to remind me of the numbers. But we did a visitor survey on our southern system and found that a whole lot of people that came to Dowdy and other places down there were driving up from Jeffco.
30-some%.
30%. So one thing we can mention, just as an example, is that we just cost shared with Jefferson County to buy Lippincott. And we could continue that process, cost shared development of trails down there so that people don't have to drive all the way to Boulder. And so that's a targeted thing based on an understanding of what the components are of increasing visitation. And it's very specific. And then that leads to many different kinds of solutions. But I think the Lippincott thing is a good example because one of the things we're trying to do is make it so that people don't have to drive from Jefferson County and burn all the greenhouse gases.
And it also gets at the cooperating with sister agencies part.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what verb other than manage you use to encompass that collection of kinds of activities.
I think in the vein that we've used before, if we can, as staff in the next week.
Short period of time.
Work on something that gets to, if I can paraphrase, sort of a combination of a welcoming acknowledgement that visitation is a good thing. I'm going to be long and profuse for here a minute, that leads to stewardship, which is part of this focus area, but that we also need to look at ways to address visitation, increasing visitation in terms of the impacts to both resources and experience.
Mm-hmm.
In 3 words, please.
Yeah, I think that was about 42, so we have some work to do.
So just to put in your pocket, develop and apply a mindful approach to visitation.
So you did
Because
have
mindfulness is a buzzword now.
And we can do yoga on the open
There
space
you
system
go.
while we're doing it. And really be mindful.
We'll all be doing that when this is approved. Okay, that's terrific feedback. Thank you.
There's one other little part of this, and Leah, if you'd put up those slides that I sent to you, that would be helpful. There was a Nextdoor post this week that made me think a lot about this particular strategy. And this is what the post said. So clearly, somebody on Nextdoor from Newlands is planning on hiring somebody to lead 2 groups of 20 to 30 in Chautauqua. And Kurt mentioned to me advertisements that we all see every day in Get Out of groups going to here or there. And if you'll put up the next slide, it seems to me this is the phenomenon that we need, one of the phenomena that we need to deal with in this particular strategy, which is why the current draft, the May 20th draft that we have, gets at a lot of examples of crowding and numbers of use. But I think it also needs to look at individual use versus group use, and the conflicts, as Kurt alluded to, the conflicts between different kinds of uses. And for me, that leads me to look at the data from the survey in number 2, which could be in a little box by itself. But when you glance at that box, you say to yourself, wow, there are lots of different uses of the system, and they're not all compatible by their very nature. And it's not only the type of use, but it's the numbers that are involved in the use that make them incompatible.
The group size component of
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a wedding party? What is that a picture of? Okay.
It's some kind of a group use at Chautauqua, and we've widened the trail enough now that this is readily accommodated. 5 abreast, throngs.
And I think part of your point is that all management starts with really good information, and I think there's some nagging concern that we may not have a really good handle on group use.
So from a commercial, and Lauren, if you're so close, hi.
Yeah, well, these examples are not necessarily commercial use, but.
Right, yeah. I was just going to offer that from a commercial use standpoint, we do have that information that we've tracked over the years, and Steve mentioned at our joint study session that quite often those are photographers. Yeah. So we do recognize, and Karen, thank you for advancing, giving staff an advance warning that your interest in this. And so we've talked about that, and I think what we recognize is that group size brings up a number of interrelated issues.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do see right now that having been initially nested under what we are now numbering RRSE 5, where we talk about reviewing and improving fee-based recreation programs, because that's where we've started the conversation around commercial use, and we've anticipated the opportunity to add a description in there to recognize that we need to evaluate and be consistent with our approach to managing group size.
Because
But I would claim that group size also influences visitation in the way that RRSE 1 is addressing it.
Yeah, and we've made, oh, sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Well, theoretically, a group like that is permitted. I mean, the permit trigger, I don't know what the exact number is, 20 or 25, whatever it is, but that group obviously exceeded it, so theoretically, there's a permit that was attached to that group. So with that permit, presumably there are provisions on use.
But I don't know that.
No,
Yeah.
I know.
Theoretically, yes. It is 25.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it's not something that would be governed through a commercial use permit, it would be governed through the special use permit, which is a trigger for any group that's larger than 25 has to require a special use permit. So that permit has to go through a review, refinements, conditions placed if a larger group would be allowed. So I guess the other thing, I don't know, for that photo, I thought one of the very first person you see in the photo looked like a staff person going up to make contact. Maybe I saw that picture wrong. But I mean, to me, that's the reality, is we see that, and there may be actually some opportunity for staff to go up, check to see if this is actually a commercial activity, or large group, we got an issue, it's blocking the trail, it's making kind of some of the concerns Karen's raising, and we address it. So I think the dual edge here is what can we do on the front end through permits, through kind of trying to guide the activity and get even ahead of that, is how do we share information about what's important here? So when groups try to plan something, they know where the expectations are, what the requirements. Then you have all the triggers from the various permit applications we have, and then there's the follow-up. So if somehow things are falling through the cracks, we have staff in the field. You know, I think a great example is people know too, hey, man, this is something I'm seeing out there. It caused a question, is this actually a permitted activity? If there's a question about it, send that information to us. We can follow up too, to make sure people are being compliant. So if people are advertising in various ways, we keep an eye out that, but we may not be able to cover all the different ways. We welcome that information being sent to us so we can try to encourage people to abide by what the expectations are.
Is that currently being monitored and enforced in any regular kind of way, or is it sort of ad lib as you hear about it?
It is a little bit ad hoc in terms of there's so many different ways things are communicated. We are somewhat reliant on the happenstance that a staff person sees it or someone from the community sends it our way. But we get, I talked to Alicia this morning, and we get about it once a week. Someone from staff or community just sending us in something that she checks in on to see if in fact there's, you know, a permit, or they're aware they have to have a permit to have that event. And then certainly there is the rangers being active in the system, seeing something and checking in to make sure it's in compliance, or making sure, you know, if there's something that needs to be immediately resolved, the size of that group, it can be resolved, and make sure that kind of gets corrected as if it's something that's going to occur again.
One of the things I just wanted to mention is that one of the other themes that we had heard in the joint study session and beyond is to integrate the strategies and to talk about those relationships in more clear ways. So we have also done that. So recognizing that all along, we've had conversations about, does this go in ecosystem health and resilience? Does it go in rec? Does it go? Recognizing it has to go somewhere. Our suggestion is that it initially lands in that section on managing fee-based recreation programs. I think one of the reasons we see tonight as a sort of like an Uber process committee meeting is because we want to be cognizant of the consensus that we've built through the process, and knowing that we've gone through with City Council the initial draft of what these strategies are. I think we want to be, you know, aware of any major shifts that we might be proposing at this point, and not to say that that's not appropriate if the board, you know, as a whole feels that needs to be done. I think that we'll do our best to incorporate these, and then you'll obviously have the opportunity to review that.
Can I mention one other orphan that I think you mentioned? We put it here, and then we decided to move it here and here. And I honestly can't remember the lineage of this, but we have this item in here, reduce human impact. And you'd think it would be about the impact of visitors. And I think at one time maybe it was about that, and we couldn't decide. Do we put it in recreation, or we put it in ecosystem health resilience? And now it's about
noise,
housing development, and
noise and housing development.
Yeah, and it's really, so I don't know. What's your take on that? It feels like it sort of wandered around looking for a place to sit down.
I think the way of seeing it is that it's another one of those issues that has so many relationships to so many other things. You pull one part of the web and you're pulling the whole thing. So I can sort of cite a number of places where it comes up. So for example, in the strategy on developing a learning laboratory for conservation, the approach there is to recognize that we're developing a recreation ecology program that is trying to understand those impacts more so that we can continue to make science-based decisions.
Right.
That's one place. Another place is to say that undesignated trails are one of the most visible and tangible effects, and so we have a strategy directly on that.
Yeah.
We had heard from the very beginning public comments around the impacts from noise, not just to resources, but also to experience. And so, as well, and comments throughout about related impacts to the night skies, oil and gas, for example. So adjacent development, when we say that, it doesn't just mean housing development. It also can even be understood to mean where
Mineral development.
Mineral development, but even we get engaged sometimes in projects around ground-mounted solar arrays and wanting to make sure that the visual impacts or resource impacts to open space are mitigated or considered.
Would it be possible, or would it be a good thing to maybe change human impact to something else? Because when you first read it, you think, well, let's leave no trace. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot more visitors all the time, but we want to make sure each one has less impact. And then you start reading it, and it's not really about that. And so you've described a lot of development activities, commercial activities, industrial activities, and I think it's more about that than individuals.
In this July 10th memo, it is reworded, right?
It has been, and that's what I just wanted to clarify, Kurt. So
reduce impacts from noise, light, and adjacent development.
Right. Does that get
Thank
more?
you very much.
Okay. We're on the same page. That's what we were hoping for. Oh, yeah.
No, I wanted to comment on
Please,
this, and I may be picking up too much on your example of a narrow-sided canyon as, well, but what strikes me is the important thing from a management perspective on capacity is not, in a sense, has a trail reached the point where it's like an elevator, where it's literally full. I mean, yeah, there might be a few extreme examples on a Saturday at Chautauqua where you'd practically feel like the trail is full. But for the vast majority of days, hours, trails across the system, we're not even in the universe of thinking, I mean, like the Sanitas Valley Trail, which is, you know, surely among our 5 most popular trails, I would guess. You know, it's never literally full. It's sure there are times when it's crowded and it's not the experience you want, and there are impacts to the environment. But you know, you could probably put 10 times as many people on that trail, and they could still, you know, literally move up and down the thing. We're not at the point where it's so congested that, you know, movement is impossible. And so I would think that by capacity, we don't mean the thing is full. Yeah, you know, like in the sense that a hotel gets full, but rather we mean the impact, you know, of those people has exceeded our ability to effectively manage it. And that's both impact on the environment, that is just so many people that it exceeds our ability to maintain the trail, to prevent people from, you know, they're sort of flowing off the trail, and that, you know, it has impacts beyond what we can effectively manage. And, you know, then there's a different issue about the sort of user experience, which is frankly a much trickier issue to say, well, if, you know, 200 people are on this trail in an hour, they will have a less desirable experience than if there's only 100 people there in an hour. That's undoubtedly true. But whether you're better off telling 100 of the 200, go somewhere else, that's a little bit of a tricky sort of social judgment about how crowding should, whether you just sort of let people sort themselves out and make those decisions, so say, this is too crowded, I'm going somewhere else, or we make that decision for them. And so, you know, it almost becomes like almost a de facto reservation system, which has all kinds of other sort of equitable impacts. But I think I wanted to sort of separate that so that when we're talking about capacity, what is important if we're going to use that phrase, and it's not my favorite phrase, but because I think it means 5 different things to 5 different people. But the portion of it that actually I think matters is the portion where the usage, whatever type of usage we happen to permit on a particular trail, has exceeded our ability to, effectively manage that and keep the impacts within whatever limits we deem to be acceptable. And I just don't want to get hung up on the notion of the Sanitas Valley Trail can accommodate X number of people. My guess is the trail could accommodate millions of people in just a purely physical sense of, movement up and down. It would sort of not be helpful. And sorry, I don't mean to pick on that point too much, but.
No, you're absolutely right. And, you're hitting on the fact that this is a science. This is something that professionals study and get PhDs in. It's a very complex, as CU has been involved trying to understand this here and there with us. When I mentioned here the limiting attributes, one of those can be desired conditions from an experience standpoint. So you can absolutely, when we're talking about those conversations at a more system-wide level where we're acknowledging or describing our desired conditions and those indicators, that's where you start to define that in meaningful ways that can be managed for. So you might, one measure of many is desired people per view shed. Or, which is exactly what you're talking about, Tom. So, that has to be thought of system-wide so that we have an understanding of even our landscape types. Are we providing a range of passive recreation experiences in a range of landscapes? So, for example, our VMP has our management area designations in place where we've started to define that. And if in this process we need to get more specific within that about maybe people per view shed is different in certain places. It's a very complex conversation, but you're absolutely right that the social component of that it needs to be a part of the conversation at all levels here.
Right, because short of some sort of reservation system, which I think would have enormous repercussions, I don't know how you manage to just say, well, people who use this trail like to have a little more solitude. And so we're just going to, cap the number of people on that trail and just say someone's going to stand there and, monitor it?
Yep.
Maybe, but that's pretty far out there in terms of how we think about the system. And, who gets to go there and who doesn't.
Look, I think there are a lot of intermediate measures. One thing is real-time information about usage over a typical year for this weekend or this weekday. I just want to note that in our packet, we're informed about the El Dorado Canyon State Park Visitor Use Management Plan and the hiring of a consultant that will do a capacity study for the whole park, not just looking at parking, but all the other resources and activities. So we will watch that space within this.
And by the way, I think, I think that idea can work very well. That is where you have a website or an app that people can go to, and just by having counters on the trail, they can tell you.
And an entry station.
Yeah, or just, some trails, it wouldn't be that hard to say, here X number of people have gone through the entry point in the last hour, and it gives you some real-time information so that someone, who hasn't maybe set out on their journey yet can say, oh, wow, really crowded day at such and such a place. I suspect a lot of activities are going to go to this, not in the sense of saying you can't go there, but we're going to provide you the information so that oh, wow, it's really crowded at that place, and maybe I ought to go somewhere else. But that's not I wouldn't call that a capacity issue. That's more helping people make decisions about where to spend their time so that if they, if something's crowded, they know ahead of time, gee, really maybe I ought to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's a really nice addition, that concept of visitor information. We haven't tied that part of the story together, so I'm making myself notes to do that. And I think, again, just to sort of wrap this up, if we're okay for this point, I think what we're indicating is that, or acknowledging, is that this is it's a big conversation to be had, which is why we knew we couldn't have it fully into the depth that needed to be had in the master plan itself, but the master plan is guiding us to have that conversation.
And it's a goal that's set forth.
Yeah.
We're going to work on it.
Yep.
And I'll make one small comment,
Sure.
which is to build off of Tom, is maybe we should just get away from the word capacity in the master plan. And I had to dust off the cobwebs in my head and then search in my email, and I was like, oh, right, some people talked about limits of acceptable change as a framework. Of course, like you said, people get PhDs in this. There's all kinds of planning frameworks you can do. But just basically say, talk about visitation. We need to come up with an approach that fits our system. And leave it at that. Don't bias it by capacity right up front.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I have always had trouble with the word capacity as it's defined by the word carrying capacity.
Yeah.
And I think that if we look at kind of different ways to handle or deal with the issue, I was just reminded yesterday I was over on the western slope. But coming back, we came over Wolf Creek. We went over Wolf Creek Pass on Sunday, and there's on National Forest land. There's a very attractive waterfall, kind of at the base on the west side of Wolf Creek Pass. We went over there Sunday afternoon. It was unbelievable. There were cars everywhere along Highway 160. Coming off, shooting those hairpin curves on Wolf Creek, and there must have been literally hundreds and hundreds of people going up this little trail to this waterfall. Then when we got to Golden in rush hour yesterday, it was miles of traffic each way going nowhere. And it's like, okay, so actually the point of all of this is that what's going to happen is that we're going to get W470 built between Boulder and Golden, because that's the only way we can think about how we're going to deal with the capacity issue, because people aren't going to tolerate sitting in a line for hours on Highway 93 very much longer. And that's what I'm a little concerned about here, is that we've got to, as Andrea was saying, we got to start looking at, I think, some non-traditional, approaches to kind of how we're going to deal with these kinds of things, because Tom's right. There's not, on the system, kind of most of the time, it's not an issue, but some of the time it really is, and in some places it really is, and it really is much of the time in some of those places.
And both for the natural resources and the visitor experience, depending on what type of visitor experience the visitors want.
Right.
So I think, can I just try and summarize, because I think, Andrea, what you're introducing and Dave is a little different than what I had understood from the previous guidance, and I don't know if anybody else heard differently, but I think that if we were, here's maybe how we approach this. If we were to use the model we're using here and show it in this way, but make sure that it's contextualized by an understanding of how difficult and complicated this is, with no supposition that we're absolutely going to do it. But we say it's one tool we might explore, and if we do, we got to go through all these steps to figure out how and where to use it. But it by no means is a commitment to do it, because we very well might find in this broader process there's no place it's either appropriate or feasible. We don't have a gate that we can drop. We have a porous system, so it becomes more challenging where we get into that non-traditional territory.
Right. Because usually the approach is, well, you build more trails, or you build wider trails, or you accommodate, so the capacity issue is always changing. I mean, it's infinite actually in a general sense, unless unless individually, as we've said, you individually don't want that experience. And so then you make a different decision.
People have long used this term carrying capacity. Council still use it, although we all know it's very difficult and some ways outdated. I like what Tom was getting at, and maybe words that are more useful is, what's manageable use? You want to have use levels that we can manage to maintain a reasonable quality of experience, to avoid irreversible damage to the environment. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out is, are we ahead of the curve? Well, in some places we are, but I think in some places we're falling behind the curve in certain times and locations. And the master plan says that. It says we got more visitation than the system was designed to accommodate. So figuring out what's manageable use in different areas, I think is what we're trying to do, and make sure we stay at that level. Now, if you want to call it capacity, I don't know, but I like the concept.
Okay. Do we have enough for us to try and wrap this in a bow in the next 5 days? Okay.
Moving right along.
I think it's totally transparent.
Yes. Okay, one of the other things that we had heard we wanted to respond to is, again, making sure that it's clear what our next steps will be after master plan adoption. So we have broken out our sections to be more clear. So we now have financial sustainability in and of itself, where we talk about the funding and prioritization. And we have a separate section on next steps, where we highlight the example plans, programs, and projects that we'll get to work on in the near future. So by way of illustrating, part of what we've also done in section 3 in that financial sustainability component is to add in cost estimates, which is what we were also asked to do. And what we've done is what we described, which is to, and Lauren indicated, assign $1 to $5 signs. Now, what we've done by doing that is that's the presumed cost over 10 years that we might reasonably be able to assign to that in favorable financial conditions. So what you see there on the right-hand side is the sort of the ideal amount of investment we could give to that strategy if all came together in the right way. Recognizing that because we have our 3 funding scenarios, we can talk about that in yet another way. And that is to say that we have 3 different levels at which we might be able to fund the master plan implementation. So when we're in a constrained environment like we are now, and with our current changes to our budget structure, that we would focus our limited funds on those tier 1 strategies that we've been working towards prioritizing. We would still make progress towards tier 2 and tier 3, but with less urgency and emphasis. So, and as we get additional funding, as it becomes available through a number of different sources, we would scale up work on those tier 1 strategies and increase the pace for implementing the others. And so that becomes sort of a successive conversation where we continue to honor the prioritization that we've gone through.
So those bottom line numbers, that's across all the tiers, right?
Yep.
10 years, that's sort of working.
Correct.
Okay. And when you go back to the previous slide, and when it says highest...
Before you go back to the previous slide.
No, go back.
I'm going to make you take it.
Is that in addition to the funding in the budget that we got for 2020?
So this is, and Lauren, I'll let you clarify if I don't do this well enough. So this is for master plan implementation. Knowing that we have an operating budget, we have staff time that we devote to projects, and this is primarily, because master plans are designed to inform our capital improvements plan, it's primarily talking about available CIP funding that we might expect over the next decade.
So does that mean, if I look at the one page with the 2020 funding on it, that the 30 to 50 million can be found within there?
No, because this is an aggregate number for all 10 years.
For CIP?
For CIP. So, I mean, one way of thinking about it is, roughly 3 to 5 million a year at this constrained level.
In addition to what we currently put into CIP?
No.
Under that scenario.
You understand what I'm trying to get at?
I totally hear what you're saying. So the constrained funding level assumes that nothing's going to change in our sales tax structure as it will exist in 2020. So your 30 to 50 million or your 3 to 5 million a year, most of your CIP and some of your operating dollars will be used for implementation of those strategies. So those are the same dollars we're talking about.
Without any additional.
Correct. Yep.
Source.
Constrained assumes no additional funding.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's very helpful.
So adding that in a way that's, comprehensible, I think is a good thing to do.
Thank you. But that doesn't get us, if it's 30 to 50 million over 10 years, that doesn't get to the end of the road on either backlog of trail maintenance or ecosystem
No, and I'll be honest too, Karen, even at the highest funding level, we recognize that things like trail maintenance or invasive weeds, that's the kind of work that honestly never ends.
Right.
So that's why we're trying to be cognizant that while we're directed at the city level to develop what's typically called a vision plan, we are still trying to make ours restrained, where we're acknowledging that there are needs that we still can't meet, even in the best circumstances, based on staff capacity and other.
Your turn.
Well, I think you're getting at my question. It says, on the right hand, it says highest funding level. That's not the cost.
Right.
That's the potential cost of doing all the trails and such.
Of the previous slide.
Both. Yeah.
Right, you've got highest funding level. So it's going to be a little hard for the reader to figure out what it means that there's all these dollars associated with preserve and restore important habitat blocks and corridors. Yep.
It's one of those things, Kurt, we're working, and I think Lauren is an expert at this and trying to make it clear.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten to the point of acknowledging, even in our strategies for financial sustainability, that we have to, under our strategy around understanding the total cost of system management, that there is work to be done from an internal system standpoint to track asset conditions and investments in them over time and communicate that in a measurable way. So recognizing that we're sort of operating in the absence of that system-wide data, that we felt like it'd be easiest to describe this in terms of potential anticipated revenue based on these different expectations around potential sales tax increases or other revenue sources. What is reasonably achievable, and how might we distribute those dollars according to the priorities that we've established and what we do know of cost. Right. So, I mean, in this case, you'll see that work to restore lower Boulder Creek, that's expensive. So we acknowledge it's both a high priority strategy and it takes a substantial amount of investment. So
see, I think that this column, highest funding level, actually means something a little different than the next graphic. And I think it's talking about the total potential cost of the thing. It's a whole lot, is what all the dollar signs say. And this says how much money we're going to try to put towards it. So you might consider using potential cost in the previous column.
I think this is where we'll go back to draft number 42.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we actually had that one.
I'm sure you did.
A few hours ago.
That was a good idea.
We did.
Hold on to that good idea.
We're working on it. Thank you for helping us get even better.
Right, what you mean is the cost of fully implementing those, which in this obviously is saying, well, depending on how much money you have, you're going to be implementing portions of them.
That's the trick of it, and that's the case where, sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Well, and that's the wording I think we did have, and the confusion that we had when we were using that is, but that doesn't mean fully taking care of the need. It just means
that's
and
what
so
needs to be.
That's why we said, well, maybe that's not the best word. So we came up with this, and we're hearing this is not the best word. So we probably have to land on what's the least worst word.
But having heard all that, this is a really important component for what Kurt was talking about before as far as the tax initiative.
Thank you for pulling this together.
Because this is one facet of the explanation for why. Right. And I think that going back to, again, the previous graphic, if there could be an annual or a 10-year estimate or something of, for instance, of preserve and restore the important habitat, that would, rather than the $5 signs, that would link then, if it's like, $30 million or 20 million or whatever it is, numbers. That would link then to the next slide where you could then see, okay, well, we've got 30 to 50, so if we do all of this in 10 years, it's going to take 2/3 of that.
And Dave, it's an absolutely wonderful point, and that is another conversation we've also been having internally. I think the guidance that we've gotten from central planning staff and in our, our guidance about what master plans kind of should and shouldn't do, I think the guidance has been to stay at this level for a number of different reasons, because we know that a cost estimating at this level involves, huge confidence intervals.
Yes.
And so it really is potentially misleading if we go too far down the rabbit hole of indicating costs when there is such a high level of uncertainty.
Do you have a key
We do.
It says what $1 sign is and what
absolutely.
$2.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we've developed ranges to describe that. Yeah, I'm so sorry I didn't mention that. Absolutely. So, 5 is 10 to 20 million over 10 years.
Okay, then that's fine.
Sorry, yes, so we do that. You got it. Yeah.
Well, then does that mean that, for instance, for trail maintenance backlog, that it would take approximately 30 years to clear the backlog?
So
since it's been estimated at 40 to 50 million?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is definitely one way of thinking of it, Karen. I think, again, it's one of those things that, we've joked that if we had all the money in the world and we did it all right now, it'd be in perfect condition for a week.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that, but we've got a backlog that we have grown for the last 30, 40 years, so that it's a huge backlog.
Yeah, so we still, again, within our constraints and what we reasonably think funding might look like over the next decade, when you think about that in terms of numbers, we're acknowledging at this point that reducing the maintenance backlog from a trails perspective, we might only reasonably be able to invest 10 to 20 million in that over the next decade. Because we have a number, as we've decided in the master plan process, we have a number of other priorities. It's important, it's in tier 1, and still we can't do it all.
Wait, that I didn't get. You're saying that at the highest funding level?
Yeah.
I mean, the highest funding level is not only restoring the .26, it's
going beyond.
It's going beyond that. You're saying that even if we went beyond the .26, we'd only be putting 1 to 2 million a year into reducing the maintenance backlog?
So let me,
that doesn't,
I'm gonna advance.
That sounds way low.
Let me advance a couple slides, and then I'll invite anybody else up to help out. So one of the things, just as a reminder, that we've done too.
Everybody can come up.
What's that? No, I'm trying. Just from this standpoint, Tom, this is just to acknowledge, though, that as we look across the decade, we want to make sure things are balanced. On an annual basis, things are going to vary for a number of reasons.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's really, that's the complication in the story. But it's important to understand that no, not necessarily. There might be a reason to accelerate efforts for, say, a 2 or 3 year period to get a certain portion of our system into fair condition if it's in poor. And that is the distinction that we go, or from fair to good for a certain segment of the system.
Right. I would have thought we're already spending 1 to 2 million a year to reduce the maintenance backlog. And if we went to the public and said we want, whether it's 9 million or 50, whatever the number is, so we want an increment of $9 million a year above and beyond, and then said, yeah, but we'd still be at 1 to 2 million a year on trail maintenance. That doesn't, there seems like there's some disconnect here in the numbers.
It's not a great point, Tom. We can get a bit more accurate with the figures down the road, and remember that's part of that is getting to that next year when we come with the implementation process, and we've had more time to work it through. Part of the 40 number, if you think about it, when that's thrown out, that is an order of magnitude cost. You could say between 35 and 45. When we say the number, which on the previous slide Darren had, if you think about that, if it is the 20 million, we've also, remember this is focusing on the CIP mostly when we think about that. There's still staff resources in there, so there's other ways we can catch up over the 10 years. It's just trying to tell that story the way Lauren points out through a more of a capital perspective. But on the staff resource side, we might be able to put, as well as more volunteers to things like trail maintenance, we can actually close that gap between the ultimate figure and then the amount we're able to put to it. Also, when we say the 40, which can be a range, that's like getting to like a replacement cost, and you'll always end up, you won't have everything in good condition at once. You're going to have.
Well, you never will, but
Exactly.
Certainly we've got to all hope that we can have less of a backlog than we've accrued over the last 3 decades.
Right.
Because we were way behind on trail maintenance before the flood.
So I think what we're saying here is, yes, we want to do that. If the board and we get direction in the master plan to make that, think about how we implement that at a higher level, we will say yes, but let's come back with the process next year when we've had more time to figure out what that could look like.
But coming back next year with a process is not going to get us there, because the people who are working on an initiative want to know next week what the number is that should be in the initiative. So next year is not cutting it.
So if we go to the next slide, if you see there, under current levels, when you see the 30 to 50 million as opposed to the highest funding level, the 130 to 150, it does show you the difference in the advances we can make in terms of the money we can apply as a proportion of that to the trail maintenance backlog.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything both these folks said. I love having more than me. I can talk about money. Of course. Brilliant folks. I would say we added so much capacity, especially in like the trails area, to recover from the flood.
Right.
Now we're maintaining that capacity and putting it to work on a backlog, right? So even if you look at the CIP 2 years ago, I think it was 430,000 a year for trails, that this year we increased to 990. So even to say 2 million is saying that's doubling what we're doing now. And then if you look at the growth of crews, I think 5 years ago we had maybe 2 or 3 to the 6 or 7 trail crews we have now. And so to Mark's point, that's a growth in capacity and a growth in what we're able to accomplish in just shifting this like Herculean effort of the flood into this equally Herculean effort to now get back to the maintenance backlog, right? So there is a lot of nuance in how you pull all this together, especially with the confines that we have and talking about things in terms of operating and capital. And really we know that in order to have a capital project, you have a project manager that's paid for out of your operating budget. And so even this afternoon, we're meeting about how to tell this story as clearly as we can. Clearly, we have some additional work to do on that, but we are primarily talking about CIP. And I would say that even saying 10 to 20 would be a big increase over what we've done in the last couple of years.
A year or a 10-year? 10 to 20?
Oh, over the 10 years, right? 10 to 20 million over the 10 years.
So 1 to 2 million a year.
Right. Compared with even last year, 450,000.
And I don't expect that the master plan is going to do the full sales job. You don't want it to be a document that's targeted at tomorrow's need for information. I guess part of what we're expressing is there's going to be a big need and external demand for information about these various questions we're all asking that we hope you're going to be able to address outside the master plan in the next few months, because as Karen has said, there are people working on this right now. So,
and they keep asking us, what's the number?
Us too. We want to know the number. And, and Darren mentioned it, but we haven't had, you got this presentation, last year, or I don't even remember when it was, when Jarrett and Chad came and talked about data. We're just learning it too, right? And there's this whole other component that we haven't even, we don't have a number on yet, which is, okay, every time you do a trails project, you need a resource staff person to help advise you on that. And we haven't done the assessment work on that side of the equation to understand the full numbers. So I think as I look at financial sustainability strategies, that total cost of management is critical. And if what we get out of the next 10 years is understanding that, that's a big accomplishment going from what we have now into what we're hoping to have moving forward.
So this ship may have sailed, or the comment I'm about to make may be too complicated to implement, but I think it's right.
Let's get in it.
So I'll say it, even if in the logistics of the situation it's not practical. But to me, the question isn't if we had X dollars or 2X dollars or 3X dollars in total budgetary revenue, how much of it would go towards trail maintenance, or that gives you some idea of what we do with the money. But to me, the real question is, what would that mean to the system? So to me, it would be some metric of, I'm just going to make up numbers because it's easier that way. But if someone said, well, today 50% of the system is in a certain condition. Yeah, right. Someone said, well, all right, what if you had 20% more revenue? And then you could say, well, okay, if we had 20% more revenue, then in 5 years, 80% of the system would be in some higher level of condition. And if we had, X amount more than that, here's what things would look like. So that you get some sense of, sort of like when you're working on your house and someone says, well, if I spent $20,000 more on the kitchen, what would it mean? And they say, oh, well, you'd have these countertops or whatever. You'd say, oh, I get it. I understand what I'm getting for the dollars. I have some tangible outcome. It's not, well, if you doubled the budget, of course I could spend the whole budget. You'd always, yeah, that's easy. This just seems to be an area where if we have a more quantitative outcome that you could say, here's the size of the backlog today. If we had X dollars, it would be this big in 5 years. If we had Y dollars, it would be this big in 5 years. That gives people, to me, a more tangible outcome of what are you getting.
That's right, a
for the
magic
money.
number.
I realize and we've talked about this, I realize that sometimes on environmental metrics, it's a little tricky to reduce something to a specific quantified number. But on things like trail maintenance and acquisitions, I think you actually can, talk about what are you getting for your money.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we're just tagging in and out here. And I was sort of smiling back at John and Steve because we were just having this conversation. And we've been trying to have it honestly for the last couple of years because, to Lauren's point, we want to know that information. I think one of the major themes, if you remember from the beginning of the master plan, was we're maturing. Right? The sales taxes that are either being repurposed or sunsetting, that was planned because when they were initially developed, that was for accelerating acquisitions. We're now coming to that point that we expected, that we anticipated to come. And maturing comes with all of these things, right? Now we got to figure out more about how to manage, how to maintain in ways that we haven't had to do in the past because we've been more focused in a different mode. Right. So I think one of the things also that we've been wanting to make clear, though, and I'm actually just going to go back a level even to this point, is that in the next steps part of the master plan document, now we're also trying to make it really clear that ultimately our work planning process and our budget approval process, those become our two primary tools to implement the master plan. And so the board is involved in that budget approval process. Council is involved in that budget approval process. That's the point at which the board gets to help us recommend and adjust within the budget targets that we've set for ourselves. So we've identified in the master plan process, these are our priorities. We've given you a general sense of how much we think that might cost relative as an order of magnitude to other costs. And when we get, and we've also said that at this level from a focus area standpoint across the decade, we want to make sure that we're balancing our investment in time and money across these priorities that we established over a year ago now. But even within that there's a range, 25 to 40%. So that gives the staff the ability to develop some work plans that we think are going to achieve what we know to be important to the community, and to come to you then with the related funding needs and confirm that in our budget approval process. And so that, I think, hopefully gives some reassurance that while we have gotten to this level, it's really the beginning of another conversation, the continuation of the annual budget approval process, where we get to actually make this real.
I think these charts, as a master plan should, give guidance about where you will spend the money if certain things happen. They lay out your priorities and everything else, and maybe that's all we can expect the master plan to do, is to give guidance on priorities, where we'll invest. Our world is complicated because we have this near-term potential budget tax issue on the ballot. And so I guess I'll go back to saying, outside of the master plan, I think more can be done to address Tom's question of what would it buy us? This tells us where we're going to spend the money. You haven't been able to really work on what's it going to gain us if we do some additional tax increment. But I think you're going to need to have something like that, not necessarily in the master plan, but for others.
Kurt, there's a July 23rd council meeting coming up, which we anticipate there'll be a discussion on ballot measures, which we anticipate could lead to the question of should there be an open space tax question, which we anticipate could then lead to, if there was, how would you spend the money? We are preparing for that somewhat outside of the master plan concept, but we are building in some higher level master plan concept to it, but we are answering specific questions in relationship to that particular meeting and that particular subject of the ballot initiative.
Right.
So
we'll all go to that meeting.
Yeah.
Just to watch.
Yeah.
And cheer you on.
Yeah.
So in springboarding off of what Tom and Kurt said, I don't think we should lose it. Rather than the word capacity, I think a better word is condition. So you've got a trail condition, you've got an ecological condition, you've got a rubric that has a measurement capacity or component to it. And so then you can start, or not, one can start making sense literally out of, okay, if we want the trail condition to be X, then we're going to have to apply Y to that, or the ecological condition. And the measurement of ecological condition is, you know, the balance or the difference between native and non-native species, for example, or the relative biological diversity in certain areas. And so you have a conditional spectrum as well as that.
Dave, I just wanted to I appreciate that comment, because what you're getting at is part of the board discussion on, you know, quantitatively, what is this we're looking at? What do these costs mean? And where you're heading is that asset management system, which has not only the condition, but things like the replacement cost.
Right.
And you're moving towards preventative as opposed to major maintenance down the road. And then what proportion of that maintenance budget do you spend compared to what you do for new stuff? And in a mature system where I've worked, typically it's been about 80% maintenance, 20% new, for example. Well, we're not at that as a system. Lauren mentioned earlier in the CIP, she talked about Beehive. That is an asset management system that we're implementing, and it takes a bunch of years to pull that together. But that's when this maturing system is going to be able to come back to the board and be able to say, yeah, here's the condition for the various aspects of ecological, cultural, facilities, trails, visitor experience. Okay, and then also what's that replacement cost? And then how does that tie to the revenue we're getting? And how do we spend that revenue? And then what things become a little bit deferred that we've just got to accept that because we can't spend all the money or we don't get enough money in place. So I think you're really touching on what we're trying to get at as well, and Lauren presented it earlier, and I think we're making great strides in that area. And I think that's why over the next couple of years you'll see that come forward. And Dan's talked about this master plan having like foundational information, trends and data we've talked about, but also this asset management approach. And that's emerging through the master plan. I think that's quite exciting for us and hopefully for you in a few years down the road when that all comes online.
Darren, before we wrap, I just picture us tomorrow at 8, getting all together in the morning, go, okay, what do we hear? And I would like to get board guidance on 2 questions. If you could go back one more slide.
This way?
Highest funding level. I sensed that there was some hesitancy of what that meant. Now that you've had 2 hours of explanation, you may feel comfortable what that means, but that might not serve us well.
I don't think this only means for that third column, does it?
What third column?
On the next slide.
Right. Well, I think
So one way of thinking.
This column, go to the next slide.
they get same words, but mean different
That's
things.
confusing.
It's not just the black column, it's those dollar signs refer to any one of those 3 columns, right?
So one of the questions that we've played with all along is whether we show, so let's look at EHR1, $5 signs, and that is actually meant to correlate with that highest funding level. But we might, in the constrained scenario, only be able to fund 3 or 4 of those $5 signs.
Are you saying that for every case, that level corresponds to the highest funding level in the next graphic?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the potential total cost of something, which could be to get all the trails in whatever good condition.
Then I think you need to have 3 columns on the right side of this chart.
To show the dollar sign for each.
Or it should, I think the title of that column should be funding need or something like that, rather than funding level.
Yeah. We've got this information. We can do this. Sorry, we were just consulting the peanut gallery.
Okay, so
Dollar signs
the
imply
comment was if we're going to use only one column, describe it as sort of the full implementation value.
Cost.
The need.
Cost.
The total need.
Right.
total
Right.
need. Yeah.
Yep.
Total.
Which brings us back to our problem from yesterday.
Yeah.
Which is your
Because doesn't mean that the need is no longer there if we hit that number.
Yeah.
We said in 10 years, we only have so many cars, vehicles, staff, that you could give us $3 billion tomorrow with our organization.
Yeah, but you can only use so much money.
That's
the point.
So this is the most we could use.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got some work to do.
Yeah.
It'll come to you in a dream tonight.
Yeah.
That's right, 3 a.m. Count on it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to dream.
One of the points I also just wanted to re-hit, though, because I think your questions earlier about what does this get you? I mean, if there is interest around the sales tax. We have gone through this extensive process now to understand from the community what's important. So it's almost like, even though this is by no means what the master plan was meant to do, that's what it has provided. And so we know that if we are working within the confines of those prioritized strategies, that the way we would use those dollars is in keeping with those community values and priorities. So essentially, additional money, you'd get more of the great thing you already said was important to us.
Yeah.
So
More to
Priorities are still priorities.
Yeah.
In terms of money.
Yep.
Can I ask you two other little questions
Sure.
going back to, one more back? No,
Oh,
one,
this
there,
one?
that one. It dawned on me as I read the packet item, the packet for this item, on page 18, that when you said incorporate the presence on the system with other strategies, that it really is intuitive to me to put signs and communication and presence on the system together in one CCEI 2 that says enhance communication with visitors. Because that's really the goal. The strategies are the goals, right? And the goal of both the signs and communication and the presence on the system, whether it's rangers or volunteers, is to communicate with the visitors to provide clear information and promote stewardship.
The goal
Whether
isn't
it's-
signs. Because
Whether it's through a sign or whether it's through a presence on the system, the goal, the strategy, is to enhance communication with visitors so that there's clear information to promote understanding and stewardship among visitors.
Yep, I was just at this point ask the rest of the board do you feel comfortable with that revision?
Yeah.
the way technology is going, we may not use signs in 10 years. I mean, it may be all, who knows? So communication's the goal.
Do we have that down?
That's right.
Somebody, Mark, you got that?
Yeah, we're working. And did I see your head nod
It's
also?
universal head nod.
Okay.
Unanimous.
Okay.
Yeah, I was already trying to wordsmith, it's enhanced communications through physical and written means, or I don't know, it's like.
But if it's just enhanced communication with visitors, and then what do you call the humph that goes?
Yeah, that.
The next thing is using signs and increased presence of rangers and volunteers, provide clear information and promote stewardship by or among or whatever the preposition is, visitors.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Was there one other thing, Karen? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the one other thing was Andrea's point that she rightfully keeps bringing up every time we have a meeting, which is, I think you said the interacting components of the whole system is something that in the next draft you were doing. So we don't need to discuss that again this time.
No, I mean, we've in a number of places said this relates to this strategy for this reason. It integrates or supports multiple.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I've got one more proposed wording change in the top tier. We've got EHR3, act urgently in response to the climate crisis. It's in the paper today. Council is going to make this, I mean, it's already a big deal. They want to make it a bigger deal. So my concern is that, at least so far, we don't have very much we're saying about EHR3 and what it means. We have 4 or 5 other strategies that address climate. And my suggestion is that we might make EHR3 an umbrella. It could, for example, say, act urgently in response to the climate crisis. Paren, or not. This element is broad in scope and includes goals and actions addressed by several strategies, including EHR1, ATT2, ATT4, RRSE4, EHR8. I mean, there's probably 5. And I think that will give it more impact for council when they look for that, because they will, than what it says right now. I'm afraid it feels a little empty right now. So.
Okay.
Where did it come from, and what does it mean to you?
So we heard I'm thinking about the joint study session. I know that Zan brought it up, for example, and it gained traction in terms of wanting to be clear. I think we hadn't even used the word climate in any of our handles, for example. So, and knowing that this is a priority for council and continues to be, we have as a city a citywide climate commitment that we're a part of. And we had embedded that in a number of different ways. And if you remember, a previous version was to plan for a changing ecosystem, right? And it just, even that, it was very watered down in terms of, make our planning processes better. So we were trying to get, as we continue to hone in on what we've meant all along in building consensus with the community and board, we felt like this was getting us to a better place of being able to describe, for example, what we're already doing and what we would like and intend to do. And we've got our science officer in the back of the room, but part of that work involves climate change research and trying to understand locally what the impacts are and what those things are. We need to anticipate, like plants moving upslope, for example, or any of those related pieces. So that's an initial component that we would, although it might not sound quite urgent, but that is one response that we need to understand more what we need to do in relation to this.
So it's more than is already in any one numbered item.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's sort of like the managing increasing visitation, in which we gave you a list of things we're already doing.
Yeah.
And Kurt, I think what you're saying is certainly reference some new initiatives we could do, but make sure you circle back and put some of these things as examples of stuff you're already proposing and going to do.
I mean, if we do EHR1, we're going to be sequestering more carbon, right?
There's always.
If we do, there are infinite numbers of.
Well, that would be my suggestion, is if there are things like research, I think it's fine to mention them here, but then say also note soil improvement, reducing carbon emissions, water management, all these things are part of the general strategy, and I think we should call them out. I have one more that I want to address under climate, and I'm looking right at Brian on this. Right now it says plan and prepare for a more arid future. I've been out of this business for a little while, but the ensemble forecast that I remember from a couple of years ago had a strong signal saying it's going to be warmer. Precipitation was not at all clear. And so my inclination would be to say plan and prepare for a warmer future. Now, we should call out that includes higher average temperatures, higher winter minimum temperatures, shifts from from snow precipitation to rain, earlier runoff, higher evapotranspiration and overall water use, longer droughts, increased wildfire risk. I mean, there's a lot that flows from that I think is important to call out.
Shifts in water availability, time of year.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And I'll just share that in speaking with our water manager, we talked about that too. I mean, there's the I think consensus around it being a more variable future, but in terms of
that's the word.
But right, absolutely. And in her sort of perspective, in terms of from managing our water portfolio, that what she wants to plan for the worst, in which case that means a more arid future, which is the years or the aspects of that that she would want to plan for. So that's sort of where that wording came from, but I don't know if either one of you wants to.
I mean, I think if you say plan for a warmer future, you're also planning for more drought, more stress on the water system and all those things. I want to be careful we're not saying something that maybe isn't supported by the models at this point, so that was my question.
I think one thing on this one was we were thinking out like 10 years, and now they're telling us that in 10 years it could be all she wrote, kind of. And so this may become more and more, even over the next 3 to 5 years, this may be a very important thing for us to be shifting resources into and focusing on. And it might mean things like the research, but it also might mean things like advocating much better on a state and national scale. It might mean electrifying everything quickly. It might mean, many things that we're just coming to grips with and across how we manage the system. So that was sort of the idea is, there is some uncertainty here, but we also think this is an important thing for us to be focused on.
And you've changed the wording here in the black and white, right?
This wording should match what's in the memo.
Yeah.
It should what?
Match what's in the memo?
These are our tier 1 strategies.
Yeah, we're just showing tier 1 here.
Yeah, but in the memo, it uses the wording arid future.
Well, that's
Are you on
the
That's
other.
18.
Oh, no, that's in,
Tier
okay,
2,
all
I
right.
think.
Right, which is
Different
part of
version.
that too.
Got it.
So we're,
Yeah,
from
yeah.
this perspective, looking at it
Pardon
from a
me.
water perspective. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
So I did, oh, Brian wanted to say something.
Can't resist. The other part of aridity is that equal amount of water, just more heat. It's
Absolutely, right.
And
And-
that was really the original idea there.
Right.
Was, yes, you're absolutely right that the models are unclear about the precipitation.
Right.
It'll probably be more pulsy, so we might have less available for that reason. But just turning up the thermostat, the water is unavailable.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think we lose anything by saying a warmer future, which will mean A, B, C, D, E, F, including wildfires. I mean, I don't know
But
that
in
we.
fact, it's going to say act urgency. No,
Well-
no, that's the other one. Sorry.
And then this is for our agricultural
Yeah.
today and
Got it,
tomorrow
got it,
one,
got
so
it.
it has a little bit more of a narrower
Yep, yep,
focus,
got it.
different.
But to your point, Kurt, I think this is one place we'll make sure that we talk about that integration, because I think you're absolutely right.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Okay.
And so yeah, no, you can go first.
No, I think we were at, Dan originally had 2 questions to pose.
Oh, right.
Oh, we're back to number 2.
You guys always outdo me.
Forgot the second one.
Oh, if we
Didn't need
go
to
to-
put you on the spot.
Yeah, if we go to the next
I
one,
wanted to make sure we address your questions.
Yeah, good call.
Steph's going to kill me.
You can do this.
You want me to? Okay, I'll get into it. There was good discussion a couple of days ago about putting in some wording on 3 of these funding levels outside of dollar amounts, which only does so much because it always goes, oh, that was just CIP, that doesn't include operating, and it's about attaching overall system conditions to these 3 scenarios.
I like
I want to caveat, we backed off of it because we felt, again, from our asset management and where we're at it, that it would be a very broad type of, I don't want to even call it a guess, but I mean, our best.
a professional estimate.
Of what we know today, which is
Yep.
not enough to really be totally confident in whatever words we put in there. But there was an attempt under constrained funding level of how to describe that is, our attempt is just to hope to maintain current conditions with the realization that some may actually deteriorate. Under
I
constraint,
think for
that's-
the public communication value, that doing that is very important.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, in other words, maintain, those kinds of words are probably helpful. I wouldn't try to come up with words that are, so if you said the current condition of the system is, whatever.
Because you have to look at what part of the system.
That adjective is going to be meaningless, and people are going to say, I don't even agree that that's a fair description of the system. Yeah, because there's too many different dimensions, and it's a lot of subjectivity to some of them. So I would avoid that, but I think describing the extent to which things would either get better or worse, without attempting to put an adjective that describes the current state of things, is probably useful.
And you can put in a footnote asterisk at the bottom that says, this is staff's professional opinion about blah, 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 to indicate where the phrase came from, the descriptor came from.
Another danger that we kind of, not danger, but
Concern.
con for that is that under one, you may actually see one of the strategies enhanced, another one's decreased, and you add them together and we're maintaining. So it's,
Yeah,
it's
it's
not gonna
in
help
general.
nuance.
In general, yeah.
You'd reduce the rate of deterioration, just for your constrained funding level. I mean.
Perhaps. While the visitation increases.
Well, I mean, you're thinking about what you're going to say to council in a couple of weeks. I don't know that you'll have time to capture all that in the master plan, but I mean, that's what I think you should be thinking about, which you clearly are, is how to capture in a few words, because in the last 3 months, the only words council has heard you say is $40 million for trails. And they remember that every day because it's so concrete and so specific, and so.
The other thing they've heard, though, is take care of what we have.
Well, right, yes.
So
Yes,
those 2 things.
So did we answer your question?
Yeah, we'll have a good conversation tomorrow and see where we go.
I did want to add one more thing to the EHR3 that is a major concern of me, and I promised you cute pictures of my kids, which Leah has, which is that an important part of EHR3 and action on climate is that I think there's an important education component behind it. So when we keep talking about climate, we're talking about what we can do to take care of the system from a climate perspective. And we're not talking about what we can do with the amazing visitation and the amazing iconic backdrop and the amazing emotional connection that people have with this land to inspire them to protect the entire planet. And it's like, I was out hiking with my kids, like, all days of July 4th weekend, including Sunday morning, where it was a total mob scene, right?
Yeah.
But it was a joyful mob scene with like so many people of different economic backgrounds, so many languages I heard, young, old. It was you had to stand in line to get to the base of the Flatiron, and that was okay. And I saw a missed opportunity for people to come out and be, while they're developing this amazing emotional connection with this land, to be like, and if we don't collectively take care of it,
That's right.
we won't have it. And so it's just like, I think that there has to be a very strong education component behind EHR3. And I keep thinking, like, whenever we talk about preserving the system, we're talking about, like, it feels like, what did I?
The mechanics, yeah.
We're rushing to save the china and the candlesticks on a sinking Titanic. We're thinking so small and granular on the things we can affect. But again, this is so iconic. We connect with so many people from outside of the Front Range every day. Let's use that and try and do good for the planet too.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. My conversation with a trail user today was around those same things. And this was a visitor who was totally unaware of the needs of the system and the things that need to be taken care of, or we're going to lose it.
Yeah.
And I think the average visitor is absolutely in that ball court.
So Andrea, who's who? What names do we have here?
My almost 6-year-old is Oscar, and the little girl in the pink is my 3-year-old Thea. And we hiked Saddle Rock this weekend.
Whoa.
And, the Saddle Rock Amphitheater loop.
Wow.
Yeah, they're good uphill hikers, and they love to jump off rocks on the way
Did
down.
social services know about that?
They're the future. Do it for the kids. Do it for the kids, Kurt. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say this earlier too, that in a very heartfelt way, that I so appreciate the true emotional connections that every one of you has to the system. And we started this process with pictures like that, out on the system, asking what people, what are your values? And I think that we really have felt like it's brought us together, and we don't want to lose sight of all that is very important. And we heard that from the very beginning. So thank you for bringing that back.
Absolutely.
Do we say in the climate change, do we say, one of the things we say is preserving it for future generations? I mean, that to me is
And
I don't think we say it well enough, and I think that we can improve that. I really do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. So one of the things that Mark has asked me to just confirm so we understand here the guidance, just to go back just to a little mechanics. Did we agree on seeing 3 columns here, or did we agree on retitling the column?
I would say either of those 2 options is okay with me, as long as it doesn't carry, the one column doesn't carry this title.
And everybody can live with that? Let staff work this through?
Yep.
Okay. All right, terrific. So next steps. Again, we've been preparing for this for years. Seems like a big milestone, and yet, you've seen it all, basically. We are making refinements, obviously, even as we speak, and we'll continue to pull this together. Our plan is to release this on Thursday, and that is
Tomorrow?
Next Thursday, sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I don't even know what day it is anymore.
You're not sleeping tonight even.
for comment.
The 18th. And that will be the final draft for board review, which includes OSBT as well as the planning board. That will accompany a memo to you, and then the planning board memo goes out the next day. So that's in anticipation of the public hearing on the 31st for OSBT, and a hearing the next night as part of the planning board consideration.
And will we be getting hard copies? Is that what you're saying?
Of the next plan?
Of the Thursday?
We can certainly make that. Actually, let's just ask right now, who would like a hard copy?
No.
Okay, 4 out of 5. All right, yes, we will make that happen, absolutely.
Thank you.
And then that's in anticipation of council approving it on the 3rd. And then as we've been talking about, after plan adoption, then we'd like to do an after-action review, both internally with our process committee, and need to explore what that might mean with the full board. And then the graphic layout, where we're making sure that we've told the story in clear ways using the content that has been approved by council, so there will be no changes to the content. And then, as we've been talking about, integrating that into our work plan process. And quite honestly, that's even already beginning as we start to anticipate what 2020 is going to look like. So that's going to be a live process where all this work that truly thousands of people have influenced is going to result in true alignment and follow through on the part of staff.
Mm-hmm.
So at our process committee meeting, which I thought was great, part of it was, well, what more should we include for the top tier strategies in terms of infographics, trends, data, stuff like that. So in your Word version, are you going to try to put in like what the captions are, even though the graphics and others people know? Well, there's going to be a graph here, and it's going to, you know.
No, we're actually doing our best to put the graph in. It just might not look very pretty. So
that's okay.
That's what we're working on.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're trying. And
you just drop them into text boxes, right?
Well, thank you for saying that. We're trying to be as responsive as we can within our deadlines, but I think we understood from you that it was important that that's part of the story. And so where we can do that, we're definitely trying to do that.
I mean, I do think it's okay to have a caption and say, you know, this is what's going to be here.
Okay.
Because, anyway, great, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are there any other matters from the department? Because the first.
Just a quick question. The date that you said that the council meeting was to talk about initiatives is July 23rd, is that right?
If there be any ballot initiatives, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I started off the meeting with a kudos to our ranger staff and our education staff. I would also like to say that those two, Darren and Mark, spent their 4th of July holiday
working.
Darren was at the office all day and into the night, so.
It was very quiet, yeah.
I really hope you had a six-pack and some hot dogs.
But that's it from matters from the staff.
So, since the first item from the board is the master plan process committee update, much of which we've just, that's why, since you were standing, I didn't want you to, that would be a segue. I don't think there's a lot that needs to be said on this, but the process committee was explicitly asked, you know, are we on track? And the answer was yes, a unanimous yes. The July 24th process committee meeting got moved to August 12th. I just want to make sure the public and the rest of you know about that. Then, and I hope I don't mess this up, but the idea is that one of the outputs of our July 31 meeting will ultimately be I would call it a red line, but a version of the master plan. It's not going to be rewritten, but reflecting our comments. And that will go to council in mid-August. They will receive the plan reflecting what we say and on July 31. That's how that's going to get captured. And it's not going to be a new plan, but it'll be a version of the plan that contains red lines or some other way of indicating what the comments were.
And I would assume that would also mean planning board comments too.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, thanks.
Yeah. And then
So planning board will get the July version?
Yes, yep.
I mean, the
They're seeing the same version that you're seeing.
Next
Yep.
Thursday version.
They will not see a change.
Will they get anything from us at the next night at Planning Board?
So what we have is time set aside with planning staff the very next morning. They're also planning to come to the 31st meeting, and we'll, in PowerPoint form, be able to update Planning Board on what you've deliberated on the night before.
Great.
Okay.
And then I just wanted, sorry, Tom, I just wanted to offer that also what we've talked about being able to do is provide a clean version also. So just if it's easier for a reader to see both what changed from the board review draft to the final plan, you can see it. If you want to just read it, you can.
And on non-sort of scheduling master plan related stuff, one significant discussion was what to do with the system overview. There was a suggestion that maybe that should go in the front, and that was rejected in favor of sort of linking to it and making it available. The thought was that having a 200-page document attached to the front of the master plan would make the document too long and sort of hinder the reader in getting to the new stuff. But I think some of the substance of the overview report will be sort of pulled out and, put into the master plan in appropriate places. I didn't know if there are any other sort of substantive pieces that we ought to...
Just to add on to that, I think we all agreed, and you've seen the evidence here today of staff for the Tier 1 priorities, both bringing in more of the data and links to the system overview report to communicate more completely why this is a priority, what's going on that makes this a priority, but then also to start talking a little bit about the types of things that might be considered under implementation, and you've named several of those. And I think that was going to happen for just the top tier activities, which, if I remember that right.
We've actually got that for all.
Well, that's not right.
The distinction, so in the first draft, we actually had that information. We just didn't have a subheading that called it out. And so I think what was happening is that the readers weren't quite seeing that in a clear way.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's from...
Bravo.
Yep. So the major difference between Tier 1 and the rest of the strategies is that we're making that extra effort to make sure that the data story is understandable and part of the description.
Okay. Yeah. And there were two other things from the process committee. One was, I think there was support for an executive summary, and that was sort of bandied about, but I think in the end we came down in favor of, there was support for having an executive summary.
And there was one in our original release.
Yes.
It's,
right.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
And then there was not support, I think, for a working group that would do implementation. I think the feeling was that having had a broad base of sort of public input and process to then turn around and have a fairly small group that would handle implementation would, run sort of counter to a lot of the process goals that we had. But that suggestion had been made and was discussed in the process committee.
Mm-hmm.
With a conclusion to do?
So the discussion was really that the process that the process committee helped us design was not a traditional stakeholder approach in and of itself, that it was a broad-based, community-inclusive approach. There were some concerns raised in our last engagement window that that wasn't what some folks were expecting or what they were hoping for, and that to remedy that, we should consider a working group. And the process committee said that that was intentional, to have not designed a stakeholder process.
Right. That didn't mean there won't be process around implementation issues. It just meant that won't be the process.
We're not prejudging what the process will be. And I think Dan's little précis was good, that implementation is going to vary from, we've already got guidance for this, we're building the trail, to, wow, this is a big deal, we're going to do a big process around it. And I think that's the way it should be.
Yep. And I'm sorry, Kurt, I just wanted to clarify one thing too, or Tom, in terms of pulling in the system overview report information, we're trying, with that, reading between the lines of the guidance of don't weigh the document down too much, we've tried in all cases where we can to actually point you to the direct chapter in the system overview report and say, go here for more information, rather than say pulling in all of, every single page that's in there, because that would
Right. I think we
disrupt the
agreed
flow.
that was not feasible.
Yeah.
But you're putting in some nuggets.
And we're pulling in the graphs and the information, some of which was also shared in the fall. So there's a mix of system overview report as well as community workshop information we previously shared.
All right, then, let's see, the next item has to do with CU South. I'll give a quick overview to this. So council is meeting next Tuesday. We don't know, of course, the outcome of that, but one possible outcome of that meeting is a request to us to set forth our position on the variant that's set forth in that meeting in advance of the August 13th council meeting, or that there'll be some other direction to fairly quickly come up with our position. And Dan raised with me, correctly raised the concern that, well, if council wants feedback from this board relatively quickly, in the ordinary course, we have the July 31st meeting on the master plan, and then the next meeting is not until August 14th, which is
The day after.
the day after, so that wouldn't work. So the question is, just sort of planting the thought, because we don't know what council is going to do next Tuesday, but if they give direction that they want to hear from us prior to August 13th, then we obviously have a scheduling issue. The one possibility is to do this on July 31st. There's two significant concerns, since we're meeting that day anyhow. There's two significant concerns with that. One is that the master plan issues on July 31st may prove very lengthy, making it hard to have a good substantive discussion on CU South.
And there's public
And there's, right, it's going to be significant, there's likely to be lengthy public comment. So that's a strong reason not to do it. The other is that it makes it very difficult for staff between July 16th, when they hear council direction, to get us good information by July 31. That's awfully tight. So I think it seems like trying to squeeze that, if we hold that meeting, trying to squeeze it on to July 31 sounds like it's probably a mistake. Yeah. So that then raises the question of, well, how about August 7th, the Wednesday in between? So I realize, but I think there's sort of two questions here. One is just to get reactions. It's totally hypothetical, because this may not play out, and I don't want to spend a huge amount of time scheduling something that may end up not happening because the council direction isn't that time sensitive, and we can do it just in the ordinary course. But, so the thought was, after we hear from council on July 16th, to just, see where people are, but it may be worth, since we're just all here, surveying folks.
I could do the 7th. And I think that's better than the 31st.
Yeah.
I can do the same.
Okay.
I vote for the 31st.
Dan, or are there other aspects of this that we ought to cover now, recognizing that, you can obviously email the board after the 16th when we know more precisely what target we're shooting at here?
Yep, well, I'm sure you all will probably monitor what happens, but we will send out a staff briefing to you guys on Wednesday or Thursday of next week to let you know, and then to let you know whether we're going to have to implement this schedule change. So we'll have to monitor. We'll both be there on the 16th and prepared.
Will you be part of the presentation on the 16th?
The presentation is going to be very brief. We just went to the dry run. So no, we will be there for any questions, but I think the presentation is 5 to 10 minutes, something like that. So it's...
So my sense is that, I don't know, I go back and forth on this. City Council is still struggling with the exact nature of the project and what protection level there's going to be and how much acreage is going to be needed for for flood storage on CU South, and that gets into a lot of negotiations. And just to add to what you said, Tom, the August 13th City Council study session will probably be with CU. So I think a lot of things are going to happen there, and I don't think there's going to be even the outlines of a final plan until probably after that. The thing that concerns me is that the question has been raised by even members of council at the last process committee meeting, is the CDOT decision a killer? And the CDOT decision is, you can put the flood wall at your boundary, our boundary, but everything else is going to have to be on your land, which could be 100 feet even. And so,
by killer, you mean killer because of our concern?
Probably, yes, probably. And so I think the memo that you all got does, I think, a very good job of laying out in brief form the nature of the impacts on our lands and the resource and how critical they are. So I think that is going to be well communicated to council. But I think and I'm sure you folks would communicate this, that changing the positioning of the dam from being on CDOT's property to being on 100 feet of our property in the middle of that meadow area is a really big deal, not just for our resource, but for consultation on endangered species and everything else. And so I think as long as we're giving that message to council at the next meeting, I don't think they're going to say, okay, we want your approval of this next week.
No.
But I appreciate you're trying to anticipate what could happen.
No, and we certainly wouldn't be voting. Certainly wouldn't be voting on a disposal at a hypothetical August 7th or meeting.
Right.
But one could imagine them wanting to have some idea of is this a deal breaker or not from our perspective? Because there are these issues that keep arising where. Yes. Someone says, well, let's look at this, and then CU says something, and people say, oh, you should have checked with that landowner. Then CDOT says this, and people say, oh, you should have checked with that landowner. Well, we're one of the landowners too.
Right.
And so, it's not unreasonable to think that, we want to kind of a check-in with us as well.
And I think you're right that an August 7th meeting might be very useful to council to have something formal, even though it's not a disposal decision. But so I agree with you on that.
And I want to make it clear that this is John and I playing scenarios out. Council has not hinted toward wanting or asking for this, so we're just playing out all the scenarios and want to be prepared that, if this comes down, is our board ready to make a switch?
I think that's really important, and I just want to add two things. And one is to thank you for making the impacts to open space perfectly clear in the staff memo. As one of the council members said to me, for the first time, we have a clear statement about what the impact to open space land is. And for me, it's really important to make sure that that level of clarity to council prevents the kinds of comments that we heard at the last CU deliberation by council, which was, oh, it's just a couple of acres. And I think what you've done in the memo is make it clear that it's as much as 90 acres of a very special ecosystem that's at jeopardy. And for the other part, for me, that's really important is to have some information about where we are with the underground flow and the groundwater conveyance system, which we've heard nothing about for the last year, because that, to me, is part of the OSBT decision. I mean, it's both where the flood wall goes and what we know from the monitoring studies about the underground flow, what the plans for the flood wall are with the underground flow, and the degree to which that's going to jeopardize 90 acres of wet meadow and state natural area. So that's the second part of the information that I would need to know to be able to deliberate adequately.
Thank you.
And that's why it's interesting that we've recently gotten a concept for the foundation that's completely different than what they were talking about before. Now, that could be a good thing, but then next week they could bring us something completely different. So you're absolutely right that the nature of the foundation of this thing makes a very big difference. And we talked at length with them about that, but that was a year ago. So.
Yeah, we haven't. And then monitoring data, we know nothing about what they're doing. And
right, that's true.
Now, go ahead.
So Tom, have we clarified the board's position on the potential disposal question?
Well, not in any formal way.
Good question.
I think the board, the motion that we passed a year ago, basically said we want to evaluate disposal in the context of a sufficiently defined proposal and not just sort of as an abstract question. Right. And I think that certainly, we've not done anything since then. And I think, speaking for myself now, I think that remains the right course, that trying to decide some disposal question really in the abstract without having a fairly clear design, probably not gonna, it's not gonna be very satisfactory in terms of our responsibilities in handling disposal. And I also have a feeling it could produce a disposal motion that would be so amorphous that it'd be a little unclear what exactly what we just did. Or it'd have so many caveats and sub-caveats that people would say, well, you didn't have a target to shoot at, so you sort of described everything around the target. That's my view, and I'm not going to be I'm out of town next week, but I know Kurt, I would assume if asked by council, will sort of say, that is our proposal. There's these other issues about, what would have to go through a disposal process and what wouldn't, but I'm sort of guessing that's not the issue for next Tuesday. But we haven't yet weighed in on, what things we think would trigger a disposal and what things we think wouldn't. But I think that's a potentially significant discussion that's probably best occurs in the context of a specific plan. But
the reason I ask is that I think there was a rather cavalier, dismissive comment about the board's role in the potential disposal of any open space, and I think it's worth clarifying that what we see our role as.
What the charter sees our role.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of a question of at what point do we do this?
Right.
And I certainly, if council asks, what's our view of our role in this, then we absolutely should, have a good discussion and craft our position on that. I think it's a somewhat tougher question of whether we need to make a statement just sort of in the
unasked.
No, I'm not suggesting that, but I just think that perhaps at next week's meeting, Kurt may be asked that.
I'll refer him to Tom. I've got your mobile number.
Good idea.
But I do think sometime in the near future, we may need to put in front of council again and remind them that we made all these motions about mitigation, and they were based on a design that may be off the table. And so it just reinforces the idea that this is not an abstract issue for us. We actually look, and the staff looked very carefully last time at what all the potential groundwater impacts could be. And so just to emphasize your point, we can't really tell them much until they tell us a lot.
And I think that's why it's valuable to have July 7th as an option.
Maybe,
on our calendars, because depending on where we are by that time, it may be important to have a statement.
August 7th. August
7th, thank you.
Right. And we're not voting on this, but I have no trouble saying publicly, there are some challenging disposal questions about what would require a disposal and what wouldn't. But putting a physical flood wall on open space.
Yeah, that's pretty clear.
To me, that requires going through the disposal process. you could imagine some cases that are a little farther afield and whether that does or does not by itself require disposal. But to me, if you put flood wall, then, but not everyone, anyhow, I'll just leave it at that. That's my 2 cents on that. So let's see, I don't think there are any meetings between now and July 31 that need to be publicly noticed. Shaking heads all over. Is anybody aware of anything that's happening between now and then? Some gatherings that you ought to note? All right. Any other matters from anyone else?
Not that I know of.
All right, then. Great.
Thank you, guys.
We're adjourned.
Live from Paris on France 24.